Council meeting. Please stand for the invocation by Councilmember Dolan, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please join me in community as we come together in each of our own spiritual traditions. Creator of the universe, let us express our gratitude for the glorious beauty you have given our world. As we journey through the days of April, we are reminded of the sense of new birth as daffodils display their beauty, announcing the early days of spring. Let that new birth be an inspiration to look beyond ourselves as we dedicate the decisions made here tonight to serving our community in the best possible way. We ask for wisdom to govern amid the conflicting interests around us. We ask that our decisions reflect impartiality as we consider the merits and ramifications of each item before us. Guide us to be the leaders our citizens need and help us to see the humanity and dignity of all. Let us be mindful of and express our gratitude for this extraordinary community in which we serve. Amen. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. In honor of National Public Safety Telecommunicator Week, I would like to read the following proclamation. Melissa Foster, would you come forward? And actually, would you mind bringing your whole crew with you before I read it? Melissa, would you just announce who it is, who are you standing with, please?
So these are the team from Emergency Services. We oversee the 911 operations as well as dispatch for the city of Lynchburg. So we have supervisors, assistant supervisors, and communication specialists here tonight. They are on the front lines every day and night, making sure that the 911 calls are processed and that we send help to those that are in need. So we were able to pull these folks in tonight. We do still have people at the 911 center. Everything is fine. But they were able to be here tonight for this recognition.
Wonderful. Well, if you've ever needed to call 911, you know how important this service is, and we all are so grateful for you. So I would like to read the following proclamation in honor of you and all the people that work for you and with you. Whereas the health and safety of all residents of Lynchburg is important to our great city, and whereas the availability of 911 assistance is integral to the safety of each citizen and visitor and the security of our community, and whereas the dedicated public safety communications specialists serve the citizens of Lynchburg daily by answering their requests for law enforcement, fire, and emergency medical services by dispatching the appropriate assistance as quickly as possible, and whereas the professional public safety communications specialists are a vital link between the citizen or victim and the public safety provider, and whereas we recognize that public safety communications specialists are mission essential personnel who continue to provide a singular service that ensures the public's health and safety every day, and whereas we recognize that the dedicated Lynchburg public safety communications specialists handled over 180,000 emergency and non-emergency calls last year. And whereas it is important for the public safety to be aware of the responsibility to properly use 911 services by calling only when lives or property are in peril, thus increasing the efficiency of the system and improving the chances that lives will be saved. Now, therefore, I, Stephanie Reed, the Mayor of the City of Lynchburg, Virginia, do hereby proclaim the week of April 9th, 2023 as Public Safety Telecommunications Week and encourage all citizens to recognize the contributions public safety telecommunicators make and for their dedicated service to the community. Thank you so much.
Council, thank you for taking the time tonight to recognize our 911 professionals. Each of our employees has a heart to serve others, and they continue to do that under the most challenging circumstances. These women and men make sure that there is always someone there to answer the call when someone is having a heart attack, when a victim calls to report they've been assaulted, and when someone is experiencing a mental health crisis and they have nowhere else to turn. These are the faces that go with those calm voices that provide comfort and send help. There's a saying in the 911 industry that they are always heard but never seen. But tonight I've asked them to step out from behind the scenes so that you and our citizens can see the women and men that serve as the city of Lynchburg's first line of defense. And for my part as the director, I am incredibly proud of the work that they do each and every day, that they continue to make sure that calls do not go unanswered. They make sure that people get the help when they need it. They continue to show up every day, and I am so proud of them. And again, I appreciate you recognizing them tonight. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Let's go up here and get a picture.
Sit down, maybe it'll be better. Make it sincere. Yeah, exactly. If we stand up, it'll be too far apart. Thank you all.
Okay, we have another proclamation. We've been working on this one for a couple of weeks. Heidi James with the Bee City Work Group, if you want to come forward. This is our No Mow April proclamation.
Thank you for sticking with this all these weeks. I really
course.
appreciate
I thought of
your
you this
efforts.
weekend when I had bees all around my deck. I said,
Yay,
don't kill the
good.
bees.
I'm sorry to be here alone. It's spring break and a lot of our people are out of town.
No, it's fine, it's
Anyway,
fine.
thank you.
Okay. This is for the bees.
Great.
Whereas in 2019, Lynchburg became the second bee city in the Commonwealth of Virginia, part of Bee City USA, pledging to plant native plants, reduce pesticide and herbicide use, and to educate the public about the importance of pollinators and how to help them, especially native bees. And whereas the Lynchburg Bee City Working Committee and Bee City USA, part of the Xerxes Society for Invertebrate Conservation, endorse and promote these healthy lawn practices. And whereas the City of Lynchburg's Department of Public Works, Water Resources, and Parks and Recreation, as well as local clubs, businesses, colleges, and organizations are committed to supporting pollinator health by distributing educational brochures, planting trees and native pollinator beds, and offering classes about the proper care of native bees and other pollinators. And whereas Bee City Lynchburg recognizes that reduced mowing in the spring allows naturally occurring lawn flowers such as wild violets and clover to bloom and supports native bees emerging to pollinate native trees, shrubs, and flowers. And whereas not mowing lawns during the month of April can help increase the number of diversity of native pollinators by providing them food and habitat benefits in early spring, which can aid in their populations in the coming months. Now, therefore, I, Stephanie T. Reed, Mayor of the City of Lynchburg, do recognize the month of April 2023 as No Mow April in Lynchburg and call upon all citizens to support essential pollinators and help make the City of Lynchburg a leader in pollinator protection in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Wow, thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay. Tonight's City Council agenda is divided into 3 sections: consent agenda, public hearing, and public comment. The first section is the consent agenda. This section includes routine items, and all items may be approved by one vote. Consideration of approving the minutes from the February 14th, 2023 council meeting. May I have a motion on the consent agenda?
Mayor, I'd like to abstain because I was not here on the 14th.
Okay. Councilman Helgeson?
And just one correction on page 7, quoted me, it's the property tax rate for automobiles is $3.80, not $3.88. So if we could amend that to $3.80 as opposed to $3.88, that'd be great. Page 7.
Okay. With that change made, do I have a motion on the consent agenda?
Move as amended.
Okay,
Second.
okay. We go ahead and vote on the consent agenda, please? Okay. Okay, wonderful. The next section is public hearings. This section includes all public hearings as required by law or as council may direct. Staff will make a presentation. Comments will then be solicited from the public. An individual speaker shall have 3 minutes to speak. If the speaker represents a group, the speaker shall have 5 minutes. A speaker representing a group shall identify that group at the beginning of his or her remarks, and a group may have only one spokesperson. Each speaker shall clearly state his or her name and locality of residence. Upon the conclusion of public comments, the public hearing will be closed and the matter referred to council for deliberation. Agenda item number 4, consideration of adopting a resolution granting a conditional use permit to allow a mixed-use building in a B-3 located at 2307 Bedford Avenue. Staff will provide a brief summary of the request. Ms. Rachel Freshheisen.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. The purpose of this petition is to allow a 2-story addition to the existing building at 2307 Bedford Avenue, which would contain 10 residential units. The existing portion of the structure would be used for mostly commercial space with a small residential lobby. The proposal would exceed the ratio of 50% commercial to 50% residential, which is allowed by right in our B3 district. Residential uses exceeding that 50% ratio are allowable in this district upon approval of a conditional use permit from City Council. The future land use map recommends a community commercial use for the property. These areas typically contain retail, personal service, entertainment, and restaurant uses. Our comp plan states that in these areas, residential uses may be established on the upper floors of commercial structures where appropriate. Planning Commission recommended approval of this petition at their meeting on March 8th. Thank you.
Is there anyone who'd like to speak in favor?
Hi, Council. My name is Daryl Calfee. I represent Fritz Price, the development and owner of the building. Thank you guys for this evening. I think over the last 15 years, Johanna Calfee and I have been the people that have driven through Lynchburg and said, we'll do something with those old buildings. And I think over the last 15 years, we've built a track record of trust. In the last 5 years specifically, we've worked very hard on Bedford Avenue, and the private investment there will exceed $40 million, including the bakery investment as well. If you look at what we're doing with Scratch right now, and then what's to come down the street, what we've done at the Dollar General building, et cetera, I think this will be a great addition. If you look at the life that happens at Golf Park every day, it's beautiful. So I think this will make sense in the space. We do have plenty of parking available. Obviously, we own all of the adjacent lots, buildings and parking lots. So I thank you guys for your time in considering this.
Okay, thank you so much. Anyone else like to speak in favor? No? Okay, anyone who would like to speak in opposition? Okay. Any phone calls or emails from citizens? All right. Well, the public hearing is now closed and the matter rests with council. Do I have any questions or discussion from council members?
Make a motion for approval.
Make a motion for approval? Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion?
It's just nothing to add other than that area has had a lot of life breathed into it recently. And it's very nice. I mean, seeing the gym there, seeing the Mid-State Insurance, seeing the Dollar General, and years, probably about 30 years ago, I used to go to that dry cleaner, and it'd be nice to see something kind of brought back to life, so thank you.
Great. Okay, well, let's vote then. Oh, sorry.
And also, the planning commission approved the recommendation as well. Also, that's the neighborhood I grew up in. Used to go to that cleaners all my life, so I'm glad to see that renovated and continue to develop on Bedford Avenue. Thank you.
Anyone else? No? Okay, now let's vote. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay, moving on. Consideration of adopting a resolution granting a conditional use permit to James Energy LLC to allow the construction of a battery energy storage system located at 3920 Harbor Street and 109 Old Trents Ferry Road. Staff will provide a brief summary of the request. Ms. Rachel Fresheisen.
Thank you again, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. The purpose of this CUP is to allow the installation of a battery energy storage system that would connect to the existing substation adjacent to the Rusens Hydroelectric Dam. The property is zoned R3 Medium Density Residential District. The energy storage system is considered a major public utility service, which is permitted in residential districts upon approval of a CUP from council. The city's future land use map recommends low-density residential and a resource conservation use for the property. At their meeting on March 8th, Planning Commission recommended approval of the petition with the conditions noted on your agenda summary. The petitioner has suggested a modification to one of those conditions, which their representative, Mr. Chris Meyer, can speak to as part of his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of this project?
All right. Good evening, councilors, mayor, vice mayor, city staff, all of you in attendance. Wasn't expecting such a big crowd. Yes, this evening I'm here to present to you the James Energy Center project. Again, we're requesting a conditional use permit. So I'm just going to briefly go over who is East Point Energy, what is the battery energy storage project, what is the James Energy Center specifically that we're proposing, and the efforts we've done for community outreach up to this point. And I'll just preface that a little bit with, these are at this moment, and we would obviously continue on if this project is approved. East Point Energy is a battery energy storage development project developer, based out of Charlottesville. We work with local communities, landowners, and the utilities to develop these projects that improve the electrical grid by making it more resilient and affordable. We were recently purchased by a very large multinational company, Equinor, that is operations here in the United States, but throughout the world, and also does oil and gas development. Our team experience is extensive. Our founders have developed and created multiple projects and companies over the years, decades. And these companies have been purchased by others, and so there's kind of a proven track record of success. We have developers on the team like myself, we have engineering staff, we have managers that do construction and operation also. We do have one project that is operating at this moment in collaboration with Rappahannock Electric Cooperative. And we have two projects that we sold to Dominion Energy Virginia recently that should become operational in these coming months. Quickly, what is battery energy storage? You can see here a rendering of kind of what a project and the structures look like. Those white kind of truck container looking structures, those hold batteries. It's a similar type of chemistry or battery most likely that you have in your laptops, your iPads here, or your cell phones. Very safe technology. What you'll see here also in this rendering is there is no smokestack. There's no air pollution emissions associated with these projects. There's minimal noise. You can see there we have a fence there. There's screening alongside that fence, a little grassy area, and then more trees. The purpose of this is all to keep these projects safe and secure out of the public view. There's not a lot of traffic going to these projects, maybe one visit a month once operational. So there's very minimal use of services too. There are multiple benefits. I think most relevant for the city of Richmond, it would probably be the electrical grid resiliency. I think all of us, I won't say suffered through, but were witness to a very cold snap during the Christmas holidays this year. Well, down in North Carolina, down the road, they had 500,000 people that suffered blackouts. And that was because there was excess demand on the grid, because everybody turning on their heating systems, but also because generation froze. Our type of projects are those that can add extra generation and basically function like a battery for the grid when there is extreme events or generation that goes down. They also function to basically reduce the energy costs by taking cheaper power that's produced during the evenings or at nights when there's not a lot of demand, and like Ruson's Dam is presenting just constantly, sucking up that power and then putting it back on the grid when there's a lot more demand, let's say 4 or 5 p.m. in August when it's hot out and people are coming home. And that's when the electricity is the most expensive. So it pushes that and moves that cheaper power from later in the night into, and sells it basically at a cheaper cost during the day. I want to make clear that Lynchburg is not a guinea pig. I don't think you have one of these projects in your community, but there's one just down the road in Martinsville. This was constructed and is operated by Appalachian Power, APCO, too. It was contracted, though, by the public utility there for Martinsville. And they're projecting that it's going to save their ratepayers $3 to $6 million over 10 years. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of what the savings can be. This is be a similar size to the project that we're proposing also for the James Energy Center. You saw a picture of this earlier by the staff, but this is the location we selected is because of it's near the infrastructure. Not all of you, but some of you approved the substation enlargement there. And these projects need to be next to electrical infrastructure. So being close to that substation, as you can see, there's red lines. They're all the transmission lines that crisscross that area, and then there's Ruson's Dam that near. So it's an ideal location for this project. There are also only 3 neighbors, one directly to the south, one across the street at Harbor Street, or these residences, and one to the northwest. So there's minimal residential housing in the area. Specific to the site and that previously pink shaded area that you saw, we have a minimal footprint on there. It's not taking up the full 5 or 6 acres of the property. We've decided where the current house is, that would be demolished and take advantage of the existing yard and grading that's there. We would maintain the existing trees in the area around the border and plant more vegetation, which is necessary per the ordinance, but also because we need it for security. And that would be mostly evergreen. We're proposing to keep the northern portion of the parcel conserved as is, kind of a grassy area, because of the neighbor's request to maintain his view shed to the northeast. So the neighbor, again, across the street there, looking to the northeast so he can maintain his view. That's a commitment we made to the neighbor. Regarding that outreach, we did send, I think went beyond, we sent out 3 letters early in this process to provide some information to those neighbors and provide them our contact information if they have the concerns. One neighbor did consult us and had concerns around the view shed, conservation of the trees in the area on the site, potential light impacts, pollution, and noise. Some of those, the light and noise, I think are considered as conditions of the Planning Commission that is placed on us. And we signed an MOU with the neighbor last Friday regarding conservation of some of the property to the north that he's concerned about, and again, maintaining that view shed and addressing, some of his, again, the conservation concerns he has. So we've done a lot, I feel like. In addition to that, we've met with the fire department multiple times, because this is a new technology, to hear their concerns, make sure they are aware of what it is. Most recently last Friday when they met me out at the site and reviewed some of their concerns. We did, because of that neighbor's concern, we did contract with a third-party engineering firm to provide a rendering. This is the existing kind of sight line. You can see the neighbor's house up on the left side there looking down, and the existing house on the property, which is in the middle of this graphic. The sight line goes down and hits the existing vegetation and trees on that hill. Okay, so you can't really see that actually the existing house on the property during most of the year because of the existing vegetation. With our project, again, you see that house gone. You see our structures there in the middle, though, on a graded plane. You also see the existing vegetation still there, and the sight line is still basically impeded by that existing vegetation. We would also add some evergreen vegetation close to the road to, again, further provide security and protect their view shed. Finally, and as the staff mentioned, we are concerned about one of the conditions from the Planning Commission related to having us not put HVAC on top of the battery enclosure. We believe that the spirit of this was to reduce potential noise being projected from an HVAC unit up onto the neighbor's property. Our request is that we modify that condition to reflect the noise ordinance in the city, and that we have to follow that. We think that would better address that concern while also allowing us the flexibility to select the best battery enclosure technology for the site. Thank you for considering this specific request on the condition, and I can obviously answer any questions about it or anything else you might have. Thank you.
Thank you. We won't call you back up if you have any questions. Thank you so much. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of this project? Anyone who would like to speak in opposition?
Thank you, Council. My name is Neil Buckley. I have a particular interest in this project because I am said neighbor, and the entirety of my property surrounds this project, and I have a spectacular view shed. My wife and I vacated probably the most premier spot in all of Irvington Park because of this unique, amazing spot that we have. Really, really appreciate the whole civic process with the Planning Commission. They were wonderful, looking into all the details of our concerns, light pollution, noise pollution, visual mitigation. Very appreciative of that. The purpose of my comment now is that we have a footprint. The Planning Commission has looked this over. There is a natural area. It's like a natural dell right now. I would argue I have the greatest macro biodiversity in all the city limits. You would be astonished at what lives on that area. But that area that's natural now, there's essentially a gentleman's agreement or a memorandum of understanding that the footprint for this project will never expand beyond where it is. And unfortunately, there appears not to be a legal mechanism to make that to somehow persist in perpetuity. I would just ask if it could just be made a matter of record, or I could just state that it would be our wishes that from here and thenceforth, no matter what the ownership or development of that property is, the industrial footprint, which is a pretty significant deviation from the current zoning, would not expand. So thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Anyone else here to speak in opposition? Okay, any phone calls?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I have 8 emails to read into the record.
Okay.
The first is from Jedi Kawanui. It reads, Aloha, my name is Jedi Kawanui, and I'm writing to you about East Point Energy's proposal for a battery storage system in Lynchburg. This proposal would implement a battery station that would decrease the load on Lynchburg's electrical grid, and in doing so, increase Lynchburg's resilience towards electrical blackouts and brownouts. Creating a grid in which Lynchburg residents do not have to worry about running out of electricity could be incredibly beneficial for locals. Implementing battery storage system has many benefits. Renewable energy has been a developing field for some time and will only continue to grow with the system. With East Point's batteries, energy captured by wind and solar that are not needed immediately can be stored and sent to residents when they need it, allowing Lynchburg's community to rely on renewable energy at any time. This will be increasingly important with the Virginia Clean Economy Act, in which Appalachian Power, as well as Dominion Energy, are to have 100% renewable energy generation by 2050. This will also allow fast response to events in which our power plants are not able to keep up with the demand for electricity. These battery storage systems will be able to adapt to these changes rapidly and make sure everyone has energy when they need it. This would also reduce peak demand, in which energy stored in the batteries during low demand times could then be dispatched during high demand times, reducing the cost for customers. These batteries will also benefit utilities since they can purchase and store electricity when prices are low, and then sell that electricity when prices are high. Not only that, but these batteries also outcompete peakers, which are small plants that are used to meet demand when supply is low, by having better levelized cost of energy as well as better levelized cost of capacity basis. All these pieces brought together are what East Point Energy's battery project will do for the community. I request that the proposal for East Point Energy's battery storage system be accepted and implemented into Lynchburg's electrical grid. The addition of the system to our grid will lighten the load on Lynchburg's residents, creating a safer and more comfortable life for them and their families to live. With all the evidence provided above, I urge the council to see the benefits of the system and know that in accepting this proposal, they are accepting a more resilient Lynchburg. I would like to thank the council for considering my views and wish them all the best. The next is from Hannah Clevin from Rivermont Avenue. She writes, my name is Hannah Clevin, and I'm writing to you today in regards to the James Energy Center conditional use permit for East Point Energy's proposed battery storage facility. In today's economy, it can be difficult to find sustainable ways to provide clean energy while getting the most out of it. Often electricity is generated to meet demand, but the excess is wasted, meaning profits are also wasted. This is where East Point Energy's battery storage plan would be most effective. This plan would allow the battery to be charged off the grid when it is the cheapest and put that power back to the grid in times of high demand. Overall, this would reduce homeowners' electricity bills while providing electricity when needed the most, i.e. peak demand events and outages. Additionally, this would be an opportunity for more jobs and help make the shift from coal-based fuel to cleaner, renewable energy sources. With all of the above reasons in mind, I ask that you would please approve the James Energy Center's conditional use permit. It is in the best interest of the community and will benefit us economically and environmentally for decades to come. Thank you for your time and consideration in this matter. I look forward to hearing the outcome of the situation. The next is from Ainsley Simmons. It writes, I'm writing this letter to you regarding the battery storage system being proposed by East Point Energy. The project site is planned to be located at the James Energy System, which interconnects with Rusens Dam and Appalachian Power Substation. East Point Energy is petitioning for a conditional use permit, which allows for the company to use the land with zoning exceptions, because right now they are looking to locate the system in a residential zoned area. Battery storage systems increase the reliability of electricity systems and decrease the likelihood of major long-term power outages due to greater demand and supply. The storage will also allow us to reduce our electricity losses as we are storing excess energy instead of just producing an excess and not using it. It also improves the availability of electricity, therefore lowering costs. East Point Energy is known for their standalone energy storage systems, fighting to make energy more renewable, efficient, and sustainable. They are able to make energy more efficient for the Lynchburg community, with the implication of only bothering a maximum of 2 residents. Overall, this project is economically beneficial for the community, creates no source of pollution, and gives the community a greater sense of security when it comes to power and electricity because the likelihood of power outages is significantly decreased. I'm requesting that you approve this project and help make Lynchburg more sustainable as a whole. East Point Energy will do a fantastic job installing this battery system. They seek to help the whole community and are not after personal benefits. Please consider approving construction of the facility as it will help reinforce our community through economic growth, the production of more jobs, and the creation of a more sustainable electrical grid. Thank you for taking the time to read my letter and consider my views. Number 4 is from Olivia Richards. It reads, my name is Olivia Richards, and I have been a member of the Lynchburg community for about 4 years. I'm writing today about this item, consideration of adopting the CUP, to allow the construction of a battery energy storage system located at Harbor Street and Old Chents Ferry Road. The battery storage project proposed by East Point Energy is a multifaceted project that will benefit current and future Lynchburg residents directly. East Point Energy has already developed successful battery energy storage projects across Virginia, including Carroll County, Danville, Powhatan County, to name a few. This shows that the battery storage program is a reliable and successful source of partial energy that can succeed in the Lynchburg area. Residents of Lynchburg will receive lower electricity bills through energy arbitrage by companies purchasing electricity at lower off-peak prices to distribute to customers at later times at lower costs. This would provide economic benefits to the city by allowing customers to save money on their electric bills and instead spend that money locally. Additionally, energy storage projects provide resilience to severe weather conditions by storing energy to mitigate power outage events. It's important to assess our energy source methods. Most power plants in the United States are over 25 years old, making them difficult to adapt to increasingly intense storms. By using energy storage batteries, Lynchburg can be one of the many cities revolutionizing our resilience to natural disasters. I am pro-construction of the battery energy storage system. I urge you city councilors to think about the lives of Lynchburg citizens and future generations when making this decision. It is imperative that we address and change our energy sources to improve the today, tomorrow, and future of Lynchburg. I'd like to thank the city council members for taking the time to hear this letter and considering my views. I hope you make the right decision for our future. This next one's from Jenna McDermott. It reads, I'm writing to express my concern regarding the proposed battery storage system by East Point Energy. As a resident of this community, I believe it is important for us to carefully consider the potential impact this project may have on our environment and our community. The proposed battery storage system is intended to store excess energy from renewable sources and provide it back to the grid when needed. While this sounds like a promising solution to our energy needs, it is important to consider the potential negative effects of such a project. Battery storage systems have been known to cause potential hazards, which could impact our community. In addition, the installation and operation of the system may result in noise pollution, traffic congestion, and other disturbances for the surrounding areas. Even though the proposed location for the battery storage system has only 2 residents in its proximity and being on the James River, this raises serious concerns about the safety and well-being of our community, particularly for those who may be more vulnerable to the potential risks associated with the project. Given these concerns, I respectfully request that the City Council conducts a thorough environmental and safety assessment of the proposed battery storage system. This assessment should take into account the potential risks and benefits of the project, as well as any alternative solutions that may be more suitable for our community. Thank you for taking the time to consider my views on this important matter. I trust that you will carefully consider the potential impact of the proposed battery storage system on our community and take appropriate action to ensure the safety and well-being of all residents. Number 6 is from Gabrielle Quintero from Cary Lane. It writes, my name is Gabrielle Quintero, and I have been a resident of Lynchburg since 2005. I am writing to discuss a proposed conditional use permit to James Energy LLC to allow the construction of a battery storage system on Old Trents Ferry Road and Harbor Street. The storage system will greatly benefit all Lynchburg residents by lowering electricity costs, promoting local spending, and reducing power outages. To date, East Point Energy has successfully implemented similar battery storage systems in multiple locations across Virginia, including Danville and Martinsville. These systems have been effective in lowering peak electricity demand, allowing power companies to spend less and charge less for peaking electricity. This cost is directly relayed on the consumer, lowering consumer prices for electricity. As it has in Danville and Martinsville, this will boost Lynchburg's economy by keeping more money local instead of spending it on electricity bills. The system will also reduce the number of power outages during severe weather events by storing energy to be released. This response to severe weather is crucial for the future of Lynchburg, as most existing energy infrastructure is over 25 years old and unable to adapt to accommodate increased severe weather events. I support the permit to allow construction of this energy storage system, and I urge the members of the council to consider the benefits of the system to Lynchburg's energy consumers, its economy, and its weather resilience. Thank you for your time and consideration. Number 7 is from Catherine Davis. It reads, with every new environmental and residential installation, there are positives and negatives involved. In short terms, energy storage is exactly as the name suggests, energy stored to be used at a later date. This can be beneficial in times of energy grid overload to avoid brownouts and blackouts in severe weather when more energy is required in residential areas to heat or cool homes, and reducing the need for carbon-emitting fuel sources. Energy storage centers are areas with large containers filled with lithium-ion batteries that are used to store the needed energy until it is time for use. These batteries are the same ones on a larger scale used to power your laptops and also the ones used for electric vehicles. We are familiar with them, we see them every day. The benefits of this energy storage relies heavily on the reduction of carbon emissions from basic energy grid use, and that thought is incredibly appealing to the public and myself as an environmental science major. However, the drawbacks of installing the energy storage centers is what concerns me as both a citizen and conservationist. Installing these storage centers poses threats to the areas they are being built in and also to the demand to increase our renewable energy use. Safety with many things is an issue, as these storage facilities have the potential to fire hazards, mechanical abuse, and thermal runaway from uncontrolled heat being released from the battery cells within the center. My main concern, however, is the damage this installation will place upon our beautiful wildlife and their habitats. Disposal of spent batteries pose a threat to release hazardous sludge and chemicals such as hydrofluoric acid into the environment. The recycling process for the lithium-ion batteries has not been completely studied, so the total impacts are unknown. The building of the storage center themselves pose threats to the physical habitat our wildlife live in. I was informed by East Point Energy that a wildlife impact analysis was conducted, but through searching, I have been unable to find that publicly available. From my understanding as an advocate for wildlife preservation, these centers pose threats to the ecosystems they will be infiltrating in more ways than one: habitat destruction, waste pollution, and safety concerns for environments surrounding the centers. The disadvantages of energy storage are not easily accessible to find. Many arguments for this installation are one-sided by energy companies when they should be addressing the environmental crisis as a whole, not simply for energy efficiency. The energy crisis we are facing is a pressing issue but does not mean we can put all of our resources towards it and turn away from other environmental problems in the world. There are other options to consider for the energy crisis, one being pushing the use of renewable energy as a whole. For Appalachian Power and Dominion Energy to meet their goals for renewable energy use in the next 20 to 30 years, we should encourage this as much as possible as energy demand increases globally. While energy efficiency is a demand in our community, preservation of the environment they would affect is the more pressing concern to our local environments. Thank you for taking the time to read my thoughts on this decision. It means the world to know that residents' thoughts and ideas are wanted in citywide decisions. I wish you all the best with concluding this decision. The last one is from Allison Robertson. It reads, I'm writing today to request the allowance from Lynchburg City Council to hear my reasoning as to why they should allow the construction of a battery storage on Harbor Street and Old Trents Ferry Road. Energy cannot be created nor destroyed, just transferred from one object to another. However, energy can be captured and utilized for human consumption in a concise amount of time. Once that time has elapsed, the energy is lost as waste. Due to the situation and our new technological advancements, companies like East Point Energy have figured out ways of storing unused energy until it is needed again, a feat that could help houses and facilities become immune to power outages. Energy as we know it is at risk of total depletion due to our society's reliance on non-renewable resources such as coal, natural gas, and oil. Here in Virginia, we obtain our source of electrical energy mostly from coal-fired power plants, which send electricity to our centralized grid. The centralized grid can cause many local and non-local people to experience power outages due to inclement weather, downed trees, malfunctions, and other unforeseen occurrences because everything is interconnected. Renewable energy will help the grid become decentralized since there will be more solar panels on individual houses and facilities that are standalone. A decentralized grid will help limit the number of people that would experience a power outage due to the occurrences previously listed. However, power outages also occur due to overcompensation of the grid, not having enough energy stored up to combat the peak of energy consumption. This is where battery storage facilities can come in handy to help make sure power outages do not occur. The batteries will hold produced usable energy until it is needed. The stored energy can also be used on cloudy and rainy days and at night. The power that the batteries store is from solar energy during the middle of the day when most people are at work and using less energy at home. Although energy can be stored in a few other ways, such as flywheels and hydropower, the best method of storing electrical energy is through batteries because it is the quietest and loses the least energy while transporting it to and from the storage facility. Energy storage needs to become a prominent topic of discussion, especially as we transition from non-renewable to renewable energy. Lynchburg needs a way to store its energy so that when unexpected weather phenomena occur, like extreme heat waves or cold spouts, we will have enough to supply our community to allow for comfortable living without worrying as much about power outages. I thank you all for your time and consideration in this new opportunity for Lynchburg to move toward a more green and sustainable future. That is all I have, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Mr. Meyer, would you like to, do you have a rebuttal? You have 5 minutes if you'd like.
Yeah, just a couple things, and I appreciate that Mr. Buckley showed up. I do have, this was our original site footprint. You can see, if you compare it to others, if he was talking about a glen, you see at the bottom of the site there, it's kind of hard to read, but that is where there's a bit of a elevation, I think is referring to the dell. Our original site plan was much larger. Again, after conversations with him, you can see that it is shrunken. And that dell, you can see that green area coming up from the bottom of the side, going up into there again, is what he's speaking about. And we would like to preserve that too, okay? And that was part of the conversation we had and part of our MOU with him, okay? We cannot, in the future, I don't know what's gonna happen 40 years from now, but as we discussed, and our understanding too is, if this was to expand or something like that, they would have to go through another CUP process, right? Finally, I think there were some comments in there about the safety of lithium-ion batteries and disposing of them. There is a very robust recycling system for lithium-ion batteries. The batteries that you'll be going into our battery enclosures do have a lot of sensors on them. If anything's starting to get out of control, they can be manually and remotely turned off. There's also, again, suppression systems that are in the systems for safety purposes. So thank you very much for your time. I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you. Do we want him to stay up here so we can ask questions directly to Mr. Meyer? Yes? Okay. Oh, sorry. Yes, Vice Mayor Pearldy.
Is the public hearing closed?
Oh, sorry. The public hearing is not closed. The matter rests with council.
I don't, but thank you. Sir, I do want to let you know and the folks know that I do apologize. There was an effort for us to connect and go over this project, I believe, and we just weren't able to connect, and so I sincerely do apologize for that. However, I've done a lot of digging into this in preparing for this meeting, so to have a discussion, I would motion for approval, and I can speak to my support at the proper time.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay.
In speaking to my support, I think it interesting that when we finally have an opportunity to talk about clean energy in a conservative way, there are some who would say, "Wait a minute, no, we can't do this because," and yet here we have what seems to be a pretty reasonable approach to the clean energy needs of tomorrow's economy. I'm not too thrilled about the location, I'll be honest. I do see the merits of having it close to the infrastructure. I get it. And yet we do have a need for for creative opportunities that help beef up our infrastructure. If we do want to have Teslas plugged in at every corner, ramping up the draw on the power lines, we're going to need stuff like this. Now, I can't remotely afford a Tesla, but it'd be cool. All kidding aside, I do think this is the type of stuff that we need to be considering in the future. So thank you for considering Lynchburg, albeit I do wish there was another spot in the city maybe it could have been done. With that being said, I was going to ask our city attorney and city staff, is there any opportunity to put, respectfully and subtly put a little more teeth into protecting what the neighbor was addressing? Is there any opportunity for that? Whoever wants to take a stab at it.
And I'll look to Matt as well. But, so, Mr. Meyer referenced correctly that basically the concept plan is a condition of the CUP. So there is no opportunity for expansion without coming back to a council. Short of doing something like a deed restriction, I don't really see a way for us, and we wouldn't be involved in something like that. I don't see a way to give it more teeth. I know that there was a MOU, I believe, reached between the Buckleys and East Point. But yeah, I don't know if you want to speak to the deed restriction.
In your
Matt.
perspectives, does that address the concerns of the neighbors and ensuring that if there was to be infringement on that, what was the term you used? The unique elements of that small little portion of our city? Does that protect what he's talking about to some degree?
I would probably defer to city staff on that question. As far as the adding of the additional condition, it would have to be something, and Rachel is correct, we'd have to go back and we'd have to probably re-examine the components of that and get the developer, the project petitioner to agree to that. So it wouldn't be able to be to where we could add an additional teeth or condition without going backwards and then coming back for the approval.
Does the current situation address the concerns in your minds?
If the concern is for expansion, then yes, it does, because the concept plan they have submitted is basically what they are tied to with approval of the CUP from this council.
A nod, yes or no, would be appreciated. Does that address some of the things, or not really, that you were mindful of? And I realize you're very unique. You're the only guy who's being impacted by this, but so yes or no, does that answer some of your questions, maybe, or not? Adequate? I understand. Ultimately, I see this as the future. I also find it kind of interesting that Lynchburg, being an energy town from a nuclear perspective, is also getting something like this, like Martinsville. So I'm eager to support this, see where it goes, and maybe be an example to the rest of the Commonwealth what building up our battery capacity could look like. So I'm happy to support it and looking forward to seeing it, and also making sure we're protecting your view.
Dr. Wilder?
I really don't have additional comments. I'm just one neighbor had a question about it, but I didn't see any other negative comments from the planning committee as well. Thank you.
Councilman Nolan?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask the question about, I know the fire department had been out there a number of times. What are the fire risks? I mean, did you have any risk with the Rappahannock project, or?
Yeah, none of our projects that are operational now have caught fire. There are dozens, if not hundreds, of systems throughout the United States. Some of them have caught fire, and you can look on Google and find those instances. A lot of those are not because of a battery runway. It's more actually because of the fire suppression systems, the sprinkler systems leaking, that again then leak onto electrical. And there's methods for addressing those.
So in the event of a fire, what about the water issue? Is there no city
So a lot of
water?
best practice now is actually not to hose it down with water.
Okay.
It is use either just let them burn or use some other type of suppression.
That fire truck couldn't get up there anyway, right?
Well, we actually had a fire truck up there last
you did?
Friday. And there's, you might remember a lip to
I do remember.
the driveway, counselor. And part of the building condition would be, we would have to meet city ordinance, which is not having more than a 10% incline, so that the fire engine could get, again, through the driveway and onto the driveway and onto the property parcel.
Thank you.
Just a question, I guess, more to our city attorney. in addressing Councilmember Faraldi's, this is a conditional use permit, and I thought council can add conditions. Yeah, I think maybe I'm wrong, but I think you're maybe referring to a rezoning where a proffer would have to actually be re-advertised and go back and voluntarily submitted by the developer as opposed to a condition. Isn't that correct? Mr. Martin's nodding his head. He used to be on the planning commission years ago, and I remember that.
That is correct, Mr. Councilman Ellis.
And I think Councilmember Faraldi was saying, was there other conditions that we could put on there? And you said you'd have to go back to a whole hearing and all that kind of thing.
Madam Mayor, if I was interpreting the city attorney, I think maybe he was seeking more friendly back and forth as opposed to just slapping us.
That's
something. So
correct.
that was my interpretation.
You want to make sure your conditions are not deemed unreasonable. So the idea is you want to be able to work with the project petitioner and city staff to be able to come to that determination.
So maybe in addressing Councilmember Faraldi's questions about the concerns that the neighbor had, I know you mentioned that you'd have to come back. You know, the conditional use permit, the only condition is that it's built in substantial compliance with the site plan, the conceptual site plan. And so adding, doubling the amount of battery storage, would that still be termed as substantial compliance? I guess maybe that's to them. Until, I guess that's the concern, so it isn't just continuously expanded, that is in substantial compliance, but doesn't require the triggering of yet another conditional use permit.
So our understanding is the footprint is what we're constrained to, and that we've submitted this modified footprint, which you see here, which to our understanding, and again, conversations with Mr. Buckley, address the concern of potentially filling in and impacting the Glen that he's worried about. We can do a project, we would, again, we don't want to start talking about the size of the project in regards to kind of the amount of energy storage, because we can put different types of batteries in there that would move that, but it's more about, again, I think the footprint of it.
Yeah.
And again, we're fine with being constrained and we can do our project there. It's also gets a lot more expensive to go into that dell, kind of that gully, from an engineering and cost perspective, because we would have to start grading and doing a lot more, and the economics actually probably would not work out that well. So it's highly unlikely also that we would expand the footprint.
And so, and that, I guess this is back to maybe Mr. Martin or Rachel at Fresh Eyes, is the, so to expand that footprint would then require the conditional use permit. Great, thank you.
Yeah, I just you might want to stay up here. There was a wildlife impact study done, is that correct? I heard something in an email about that.
Yeah, so we've done initial analysis of, are there any endangered species or things about that, and the engineering firm has come back and said that did that study that there is no endangered species or any habitat that, again, would reflect that would be impacted.
And I guess the concern that I have, I share with Councilmember Helgeson and Vice Mayor Faraldi about Dr. Buckley's concerns. Is there any way that we could get that MOU, I guess, to be a part of the CUP? Is that something that's, I'm just asking that question. Is there something we can do to make sure we're constraining the project to what was agreed upon with the neighbor?
I'll test my legal brain. I don't think you can add a private MOU to a third party, and the third party would be the local government element. It'd be a little out of whack.
It probably wouldn't be a good practice, because it sounds like that MOU is specific to a particular neighbor, and the conditional use permit is basically for a citywide purposes.
Interesting. Because I guess my concern is that I want to make sure that agreement was honored and continues to be honored in the future.
Yeah, I think this is extraordinary. I don't think it's been done necessarily around here, but it was something, again, because of the neighbor's concern around this and trying to get him some confidence around it and some, I want to say, ammunition in the future. If for some reason the project was to go larger, you could bring that back into what would be another CUP process.
And I guess with that CUP, when we're constrained to the footprint, are we also, when we're talking about being constrained to the footprint, Are we also constrained to the height that the project's being built with that CUP? Okay.
Real quick, a condition from the planning commission was a limit on the enclosure height at 12 feet, and we have no problem meeting that and keeping with that.
One question. What portion of the population of Lynchburg would be affected by this?
Well, in theory, every person that is, again, an APCO customer, which I think is every resident in the city, basically, would be benefiting from this project. Now, the APCO grid, of course, has power lines that go into the county, Amherst County, et cetera, and spread around, but it does in theory. Now, how potentially the APCO kind of to a certain extent manages that is up to them. We won't necessarily control that, we don't think, and we haven't necessarily sold, the project to them yet either. But having the system here, again, should benefit all of the city's residents.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, well, let's vote on the motion to adopt the resolution to grant the conditional use permit, please. Great. Wonderful. Okay, moving on. Consideration of adopting a resolution granting a conditional use permit to allow the construction of 87 townhomes to be located at Windsor View Townhomes, 710 and 714 Leesville Road. Staff will provide a brief summary of the request. Ms. Rachel Prescheisen.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. The purpose of this CUP petition is to allow the construction, as you said, of 87 townhomes. A CUP was previously approved at this location by City Council on September 24th, 2019, but it has expired. Townhome developments are a permitted use in the R3 Medium Density Residential District upon approval of a CUP. The property is recommended for medium-density residential uses on the future land use map, and these areas are characterized by smaller lot, single-family detached housing, duplexes, and townhouses at densities of up to 12 units per acre. The CUP petition is the same number of units as the 2019 petition and the same layout as well, with the exception that the entrance to the development would be limited to right-in and right-out turning movements as requested by the petitioner. Planning Commission recommended approval of this petition at their meeting on February 22nd. Thank you, Council.
Thank you so much. We'll call you back up if we have any questions. Is there anyone who would like to speak? Oh, you go ahead, present.
Good evening, Madam Mayor,
Hello.
Vice Mayor Feraldi, and Council. Thank you for allowing me to represent my client, Lynchburg Renting LLC. My name is Russ Nixon with Nixon Land Surveying. In September of 2019, right before the pandemic hit the United States and our state shut down, my client got approval for this project as you see it on the site plan that was presented in this packet. It took 10 years of work from my client with the previous engineering company to achieve that approval. A lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of effort. Let's fast forward through a pandemic that shut our state down, shut many of my colleagues down in our industry, and impacted the work that we were trying to complete with a very heavy workload. My clients found out through their previous engineering firm that that company was shutting down, being purchased by a different firm out of Richmond, and impacting the timing of when they could present a project to the city of Lynchburg for approval from engineering and surveying. In summer of 2022, I was asked to give a proposal for this project because it was apparent that the previous company was not going to complete the work to present to the city for engineering due to the age of several of those working for the other firm, retirement times, and that type of thing. The other firm could not complete the work for them to get it into the city to meet the 2-year timeline for approval. The conditional use permit timeline died in the winter of 2022, early 22. My client was unaware of that. I was even unaware, unfortunately, that conditional use permits have an expiration date. When I got the project of August of last year, I started the surveying immediately, surveying the property, doing the topo surveys, locating sanitary sewer, water lines, roads, streets, presented a survey plat to the city planning office of an 87-unit townhouse development. We went through a TRC review, and in that TRC review, Kevin Henry informed me that the conditional use permit had expired. Now you're seeing where we are today. I've resubmitted an application for this conditional use permit requesting a renewal of a conditional use permit for an 87 townhouse unit development. And if you'll notice, our site plan is the same site plan by Berkeley Howell Associates that was submitted and approved in September of 2019. We did that because we want to make sure you understand that our proffers from the previous rezoning are still in place. The conditions for this conditional use permit are still in place. And we still intend to hold this project to the same conditions and proffers from the previous engineering firm. We did also, as a part of this condition, do a new traffic study on Leesville Road, determining what type of entrance we would need into our site. And it was approved and agreed to by Lee Newland, your engineer with the city of Lynchburg, that a right-in, right-out only entrance would work on Leesville Road. And we would also use Middle Street as an access in and out of this property as part of the development. That was the real hurdle, was determining what type of entrance we would need to have on our property or into our property. I believe because of the discussion we had with the Planning Commission and their recommendation, I believe that this is a good project moving forward. My client is a Lynchburg native. There's 3 partners in this project, and they all are from here. They've done some great developments in Lynchburg, and we look to provide affordable townhouses for sale on Leesville Road. I'm here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nixon. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor? No? Anyone who would like to speak in opposition? Okay, any emails or phone calls? There are none. Okay, well, the public hearing is now closed and the matter rests with council. Councilman Helgeson.
Thank you. Now, I've had, I guess, and I can appreciate Mr. Nixon's and Lynchburg Renting's current dilemma, and it's actually now a dilemma too, because this came before council numerous times. It first came in 2007 with 76 townhomes, and council denied that request because it was an R1 going to an R3 and having the townhome. So in an R1, how many units could you put on an R1, Mr. Martin, maybe about based on roughly, this is like 7.1 acres or something? 2.9 units would be basically you could have done about 14 units, 15 units by right. Council denied it in 2007. It then came back in 2015 with a few less townhomes, still the R1. Then it denied it again, and then it came back again in 2019, and I guess 3 times the charm. But council then said, okay, and they did have some extra conditions in there with regarding sediment and runoff and some improvements, but it did go from an R1 to an R3. So now the property is sitting at an R3 now, correct? Because, so what has expired is the conditional use permit, but the R1 to R3 zoning now stands, or still stands. So in an R3, you can do a little bit of different things, but the intent, I believe, and I voted against it in 2019, because at that time there were same neighbors that objected the previous several times, and now we're in a different dilemma. I can appreciate what they would do, but this is the 4th time now this same project has come back while I've been here, and I made a commitment to protect the neighborhood from high density, especially when it was an R1 where you could build 14 single-family homes, and now it's gone up to 87 townhomes. I'm sure there's going to be some, now that COVID's lapsed and whatnot, and they'll be, I'm sure, do a good job. But again, in respect for the neighborhood that I've represented for all these years, I'll be voting against this proposal as it stands.
Councilman Mischins?
Kind of the same, kind of similar to what Councilmember Helgeson's concerns are, and I also live over in that area. There's been a lot of high density that has come into Ward 3 and on the other side, and Ward 4 on the other side of Timberlake. And I've got some concerns about the harmony in the community with bringing 87 units in and out, partially on Middle Street into that neighborhood. That's it's a tremendous amount of traffic to go through that single-family neighborhood. And then also from the public safety aspect of it, I just can't approve any conditional use permits for additional multifamily until we get another ladder truck in this city, because our resources are taxed enough in the fire department. So that's where I stand, and I won't be approving this.
Vice Mayor Feroldi?
I would ask city staff if you could refresh us about what's coming to this new potential fire department with Liberty University. Sure. As far as resources within the building itself?
Yes, sir. Vice Mayor Feroldi would be a ladder truck and a heavy medic.
Serving the 24502 area, primarily the Wardsworth corridor?
It would be
If you don't remember, that's
it would
fine.
be at the intersection of Odd Fellows Road and Liberty Mountain Road, if that's in that area.
Very good political response. I hear the concern from my colleague, Councilmember Mischins, but if we're being truthful, the last rezoning we had on this corridor was made for the same justification. One meeting or two meetings later, we have this new idea coming from Liberty University and what it may look like, and we do have additional resources on the way. So I would caution council from continuing to use that as a justification for denial if it in fact is off base. In speaking to this, I have been a long proponent of smart development in the right places. I think I'm a little caught in this one between doing the right thing, protecting the neighborhood, creating opportunities for folks to own their homes and increase the residential market, I guess would be the term, the stock of owning your house in Lynchburg. And also, not to bring up an old issue, but increasing the tax base. I would think if you're selling these houses at $225,000-ish a pop and the tax rate is set at 89 cents. I know some folks are here to talk about that tonight, but just do the math that, you can add up how much recurring taxes that would bring to the city. So, there are things to consider within this that I'm aligning with, trying to maintain what I've said as far as Ward 4 for dense development. I think one key difference here is that they are townhomes as opposed to apartments. Timberlake is tight. I mean, it is. I think I won't say it's hurting, but it's getting real dense real quick, and I don't think Timberlake can from a traffic flow can maintain the amount of volume it's seeing. The difference with Leesville is that there's less traffic lights. It's more flowing. There are some things that I'm not terribly thrilled with this. This plan, as outlined by some of my colleagues, but I'm trying to balance that all with the needs of the city, and with that of immense respect and appreciation for what's been said, I would move for approval.
Is that the motion?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any more discussion down here? Councilwoman Dolan?
Yeah, I would support this only because of some of the reasons that Vice Mayor outlined. It does bring about the ability for people to have home ownership versus all the rental units we have up in that area. So I think that's the key reason I would even support this, is the home ownership option.
Dr. Wilder?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I'm having a little challenge with my iPad, but so I can't get all the notes. Did this have to go to, I know it went to Planning Commission, but did it have did it require a public open meeting for that?
He always requires a public hearing, yes.
I cannot hear, I'm so sorry.
Yes, it did. Public hearing. It had a public hearing.
And I'm trying to find, were any comments from the neighbors about the project?
I know there was one neighbor, actually I had to step out early at that meeting. There was one neighbor who had concerns. I think mainly her questions related to timing of the project more than the project itself.
Okay. All right, great, thank you. That's all, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? No? Okay, well, let's go ahead and vote then.
Motion passes 5-2.
Okay, moving on. The next section is public comment. During public comment, individual speakers have 3 minutes to speak, and those representing a group have 5 minutes to speak. Typically, City Council takes comments made during the public comment section of the agenda under advisement and may refer concerns to the city manager for follow-up. Citizens often express conflicting and diverse positions regarding specific issues under consideration. To encourage citizen participation and to avoid intimidation to persons who may express sometimes unpopular opinions, applause, cheers, or jeers from the audience is not permitted. When appearing before City Council, citizens may not engage in behavior that intimidates or insults others, engage in disruptive behavior, use profanity or vulgar language, promote private business ventures, or campaign for office. We will now hear from a group or representative regarding a matter. John Salmon, Unified Potential, please restate your name and locality of residence.
Hi there, John Salmon. I'm a resident of the city of Lynchburg, representing Unified Potential, here to talk to you a little bit about community IT. For years, I've tried to get you to help implement a platform of connectivity for our community, what I've called a digital infrastructure. I've been routinely told it's too complicated to understand. My logic has always been this: smartphones and social media have completely changed the way we interact. If we do not understand what these things are and how they work, our ignorance will be exploited for financial gain with potential catastrophic consequences. We are watching this unfold all around us. When at your request, I tried to show you how we could enable local businesses to do deliveries without having to pay companies like DoorDash, I was told it looks too much like private industry. I said, but it's nothing like that. And I was told it doesn't matter. It looks too much like it. And I admit it's complicated. Our patent application refers to a digital infrastructure manager that allows us to build multiple networks of widely varying function to serve diverse needs. One very important community need is transportation. And we have asked to use a microtransit pilot to show how this could work. But we are not a transportation company. I'm only building one to overcome the hurdle of a lack of cooperation with current organizations, including the GLTC. Behind the scenes, our system is very complicated, but to the user, it is simple, allowing access to numerous methods of transportation from one portal, such as public transit or taxis, a network of volunteers, a true rideshare, a system specifically to help get to work, and any number of others. It lets us connect together and help each other instead of relying on outside help that always comes at a price. And we plan to go even further, implementing it as a clinical trial evaluating health and wellness metrics, a process that will require even more proprietary technology to assure privacy, something that no other transportation company anywhere in the country is prepared to do. We built this component to overcome HIPAA, a law supposedly made to protect us but routinely used by industry to maintain control over our most personal data for financial gain. This is the missing link for true wraparound care. We offered this to the school system as a method to coordinate in-school and out-of-school behavioral and mental health resources, what your administration called a game changer, only to have discussions halt because, in short, it's complicated. Look at the effects of social media and what they're having on our ability to discuss anything, because this is what it does. It turns us against each other and makes every inevitable difference in our viewpoints horrifying so that we literally cannot stop fighting. The effects on kids is exponentially worse, which is why we purpose-built a social media platform for the community, specifically for young people, for our schools, something that they can help us shape into one that is both engaging and healthy. And it interconnects with everything else: businesses, transportation, and healthcare, and that's what a true digital infrastructure is. We have the opportunity to empower our local businesses to engage with us in ways the Amazons of the world cannot, to have the most advanced transportation system in the world, independent from Uber, to build a healthy social media platform that strengthens us instead of dividing us, and to allow everyone access to true wraparound services depending on their needs. Or we can keep fighting pointlessly and keep on doing what we've been doing that's never worked simply because it's easy. and to the delight of industry that capitalizes on our failure to fix our own problems. Lots of debate in the city today about the budget, which is also complicated, but the details are critical, such as the connection between real estate taxes and support of our public school system. My mother's advice when we looked at our first house was, even if you don't have kids, the public school system where the house is located is the single best way to know the quality of the location. The rule of real estate is location, location, location. So, let's do another visual. Did this last time. You had to know I was coming. All right, let's say this block represents the $15 million we spend every year on buses. Okay? We spend about 10 times that on the health care related to people in poverty. If we were able to replace this $15 million and do something about this so that we spent less, we could take that money and help support our schools. I don't know where I'm going to put the crayons. And the little clock. Can we really do that? Can we build it ourselves? No. Foolish little girl, you would need their help, and they will never do it. Their pointless squabbling keeps you in your place. Now get back to your miserable life where your suffering and inevitable failure will be used as justification for our funding.
Thank you, Dr. Salmon. Thank you.
Prove me wrong.
We will now hear from a citizen regarding a matter. Aaron Roop. Please restate your name and locality of residence.
Hello, my name is Erin Roop. I'm in Boonesboro, and as a teacher, I unfortunately haven't been able to afford my own home yet. But I'm here to talk about the property tax cut. So I'm sadly speaking before you today. I say sadly because this is the second time that members of council have tried to eliminate the voice of the residents of Lynchburg by removing the democratic process. The members of council were elected to represent Lynchburg. The shady backdoor deals that are currently happening are a direct threat to the democratic process. I would therefore like to ask again, can you please include what you will be voting on and in which city council meeting on all agendas? Can you please provide Lynchburg residents the time to sign up to speak at a hearing? Why are there members of council who are avoiding public input for the very public they were elected to serve? Why are you ignoring the advice of the city manager? This vote would be the largest reduction of our city's budget in recent history. What is the council's plan to address the $12 million deficit that will ensue? Who will be impacted? Who will lose their jobs? Which services will be cut? I would like an answer to all of these questions. As a Lynchburg resident, I take a class at Parks and Rec, attend many of our arts events, and weather providing, I go to the trails at least once a week. This major of a deficit will surely impact the jobs and services offered to the Lynchburg residents that you are elected to represent. An 89-cent tax cannot support our current infrastructure, which has helped grow Lynchburg into the thriving community I chose to move to years ago. This, once again, looks like a vote that would make for a great re-election strategy, but ignores the actual impact on residents who live here. Please heed the advice of the city manager, the chief financial officer, and the city budget's recommendation and offer a more realistic tax reduction. There's still time to offer another hearing and to offer answers to what and who will be impacted. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear from a citizen regarding a matter. Kathleen Davis.
Not the same. That person sounded way smarter than me. I see what you're doing. You're trying to run my time down. Okay, hello. Thank you, City Council, for having me tonight, Mayor and Vice Mayor and the City Council. Thank you for the opportunity to fight for the city I've fallen in love with over the last 3 years. First, I'd like to be clear. I hear your points about lowering this tax rate. But many Lynchburgers are here tonight and were here last week that want you to compromise, are asking you to compromise, are telling you to compromise. I am asking you, now that you have had the opportunity to hear from citizens, please use this extra time to show that you want to work together as a council that this city elected. Please, do not burn the city down just because you can. Speaking of the extra 89-cent tax plan 4 council members are proposing, how did this backroom meeting even happen? Where did this meeting happen? Where were these papers signed before they were scanned and put online? Is it legal for more than 2 council members to meet and talk about council business? Chris Feraldi said proudly last week that 2 taxpayers who he was fully aware had waited several hours to speak after an almost 4-hour delay, that he, Missions, Taylor, and Hegelson had all met and decided that 89 cents was going through regardless of what any of us had to say that night, tonight, or next week. And that is online. This behavior and a ton of recent city council behavior should be terrifying to Lynchburg residents and potential residents. These 4 council members are almost giddy about our neighbors, city workers, potentially losing their jobs. This council 4 would have the public believe that this useless tax cut is cutting government spending, but really they are cutting our city workers' livelihoods. They are telling the people who show up for work every day, every single day for our city to do more with less or get out. This is a terrifying moment for our city workers. Big companies looking to bring business and jobs here will watch 10 minutes of one of these city council meetings and see how you all speak to each other and immediately send Roanoke a text saying, "You up?"
Thank you. We will now hear from a citizen regarding a matter, Mr. Tom Rogers. Is there Tom Rogers here? No? Yes? No? Okay, moving on. Oh, yes.
Before we go to our next speaker, I'd move council add a agenda item for discussion about our rules of procedure at the end of the public comment process.
Rules of procedure?
What item?
Who wants
That's a motion.
to add?
Move to add a discussion about our rules of procedure at the end of the public comment section.
I'm gonna second that.
No further comment.
Does anybody want to discuss that?
Just put it at the end of it and talk about that. I don't know what it is, but.
Okay, so anybody want to amend the agenda? We have to go ahead and vote? Okay, we will now hear from a group representative regarding a matter, Corey Shutter.
Hi, I should be just speaking as an individual, not as a group.
Okay.
My name is Corey Shutter, and I'm a resident of Ward 2. We all want a safe and prosperous city, but at what cost? The proposal to cut the tax rate to 89 cents may sound appealing to some, but have we thought about the consequences? What will unfold in the coming years if the proposal is implemented? Council members have claimed to want a safe city, but can you sustain the police and fire pay schedules on such a low tax rate? Can you make these jobs not just jobs but careers when you're slashing future employment funding? Where will you make up the difference? And are you so lasered in on a political win that you don't care about the consequences? We have trusted our city's financial safety to the city manager, to the chief financial officer, and to the city budget office for years. They have recommended a tax rate of $1.05, yet you all are ignoring their advice and their professional advice and expertise. And why? We don't know why. Why are you just ignoring the people with real experience in managing municipal budgets? Just weeks ago, members of this council pushed to disregard the voice of the community and move forward with a vote on one of the most controversial elements of council history, the largest reduction in city revenues in modern Lynchburg history. Kind of an aside from that, in conclusion, last week I was listening to a podcast featuring Councilman Feraldi that was produced a couple of years ago. It was a really great podcast. I recommend that everyone look it up and listen to it. You could hear the care and reverence in Councilman Feraldi's voice as he spoke about how the police are undervalued and don't get the recognition they deserve. And now you're willing to slash their future. If this is something you believe in, what happened? Why are you slashing the budget that will increase police pay schedule in the future? If you think this city is unsafe, if you think this city deserves protection, I want your voters to know that you intend to take us down to the bones of this city. Own your words, own your actions, because that is our future. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear from a citizen regarding a matter, Carly Schaefer. Next up will be Beverly Adams, and then Jack Underwood.
Good evening. I am Carly Schaefer, born and raised in Lynchburg and now a resident. As a parent, educator, and Lynchburg resident and homeowner, I'm here to advocate that the property tax should not decrease below the $1.05 proposed by our city manager. Decreasing it to 89 cents without proper process is an unethical disservice to Lynchburg and those affected. I also support Superintendent Dr. Edwards' LCS budget, which includes increases in pay for teachers, bus drivers, instructional aides, and other critically important underpaid employees who shape the success of our students and therefore our community. And make no mistake, the quality of our schools deeply impacts our city. In the recent joint city council and school board meeting, I watched council members state that funds were not needed for our schools, that teachers did not need more pay, that the money is there. My jaw was on the floor. Our teachers' salaries are second to last in the state and significantly affecting retention and turnover rates. Our bus drivers are severely underpaid with kids on buses until after 5 p.m. If we want excellent teachers, drivers, and employees, they must be paid as though we value them. When you say the money is there, but our teachers are buying their own tape, paper, pencils, and basic supplies, respectfully, I differ with your opinion. When you say that teachers don't need more funding, yet our students are still reeling from the pandemic and a learning gap that only grew since 2020, I find myself confused what magic you think these teachers are capable of. Spend a week or even a day in the schools, as you are invited to do, on the front lines, and maybe you can understand this from a more educated and informed perspective. The city manager, CFO, and city budget office has recommended $1.05. They've brought our city to a AA+ bond rating. You've been on the council for not even 4 months, and yet you claim to know more. You're about to cut over $12 million of our city's budget. How will you sustain our schools, our infrastructure, inflation struggles, and our city safety? No other city in Virginia can afford such a low tax rate. I'm infuriated by the ignorance you show regarding what it looks like to run a city and support education. Community members stayed at the last city council meeting after midnight for you to bulldoze the tax breakthrough and not listen to your citizens. Others aren't able to leave our children to sit through hours of meetings that consist of political games. My kids' lives are not a game. I have children at T.C. Miller where innovation, support, and learning is prioritized, yet we are still struggling with the challenges faced by schools everywhere. Reducing the tax rate will not only hurt them and our schools, but so many aspects of our city. Lynchburg will suffer from the millions of dollars of lost revenue. What is your plan? You should not cast this political, performative vote. You should listen to the city manager and to the community and do it openly in a public hearing. Show us respect and actual leadership and invest in us and our schools. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ms. Beverly Adams? Oh, hearing from a citizen regarding a matter, Ms. Beverly Adams.
I'm so used to being first. Adams, come on, guys. I'm Beverly Adams. I'm a resident of Lynchburg City. And what I want to address is perspective, presentation, professionalism. I understand that businesses, corporations, hospitals, city councils, there's a process. And there's always going to be controversy, there's always going to be waste, there's always going to be stuff going on. But I have seen some Facebook pages that I find highly disturbing. Comments like, for the last 20 years, Lynchburg has witnessed a council that did not fully prioritize the taxpayer first and foremost. In November, that changed. Last night, it was solidified. City Council's conservative majority has taken over Lynchburg's government away from the bureaucracy and returned it to the citizens. The era of excessive government spending in Lynchburg has come to an end. This is on social media. We all know how dangerous social media is. And this is one of my greatest concerns. Inflammatory posted remarks are designed to do just that, to inflame, to create hatred, to divide people, and to create fear. As public officials, your personal and public accounts are under the microscope. The statements that I see on your Facebook pages are not designed to create community, to bring people together, or to educate by presenting facts. City budget process is exactly that. I respond really well to facts. Tell me what's here, give me the algorithm, tell me what the percentage changes are going to be and how that's going to affect things. I do well with facts. Every time you post that, someone becomes angrier, someone turns away, not believing that there's any hope for our community, for our state, for our country. We all know the state our country is in. And I'm asking this council to be responsible. I study with a wonderful woman in England named Joanne Averson, and one of her foundation statements is that every single one of us is different, and that alone makes us the same. And again, Madam Mayor, I am so proud of the way you're filling into this position. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Okay, we'll hear from a citizen regarding a matter, Jack Underwood, followed by Michael Bremer and Shal Nunn.
My name is Jack Underwood. I live in precinct 404, Cedric Drive. 6 years ago, I retired, and I returned to Lynchburg after living in Plano, Texas for over 7 years. Now, Plano is a very conservative, right-wing Republican state. City, that is. It supported Donald Trump in the last election, and the leaders are very conservative Republicans. But surprisingly, when I moved there, I discovered that our property taxes in Plano were 2.4%. Not 1%, not 0.89, but 2.31%, more than doubling the taxes that we pay here in Lynchburg. First, why would these very conservative Republican leaders vote to have such high property taxes? I looked and I asked, and it's because they're very smart Republican leaders. These conservatives know that property taxes are essential to good schools, good police, good infrastructure. These conservatives know that without good schools, without good police, without good infrastructure, people won't come to your city. These conservatives know that people and businesses don't move to your city. When that doesn't happen, property values fall for everybody, and everybody gets poor. Plano schools are consistently ranked in the top 1% to 2% of schools in the nation, public schools in the nation. I have a daughter that's currently a Jefferson Scholar at UVA and a son that's starting med school there this coming fall. I think he's in the crowd right over there tonight, okay? And I asked him, I said, son, can you tell me, do you think you had any benefit from the Plano schools? And he says, Dad, I wouldn't, it hadn't been for the Plano schools, I'd never gotten into to med school at UVA. Plano's busting at the seams right now because people and businesses move to a place with excellent schools, police, and infrastructure. Despite the fact that Plano has one of the highest property taxes in the country, they move there because of that. Second, I have seen this tax trap throughout my business experience. I graduated from Vanderbilt Law School, was vice president financial planning for the Sun America Group, and I eventually was president of a small financial services company in San Diego, California. So, and I've been to 49 of the 50 states, lived in 11 different cities. I saw a lot of different things. Lynchburg is in competition with many other small cities. When we opened an office in a new town, we always looked at the police and the infrastructure and the schools. That was the major consideration for doing that. Please don't be penny wise and pound foolish and put us in the tax trap that's killing so many small towns today.
Thank you so much. Okay, Mr. Bremer, we will now hear from a citizen regarding a matter. Mr. Bremer.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. My name is Michael Bremer. I reside in Ward 4 in the city. I'm concerned about the consequences of the new majority on council reducing the real estate tax below the city manager's budget. The new majority is acting without fully considering the impact on Lynchburg and without hearing the legitimate concerns of its citizens. I'm troubled by the business of our city conducted in the wee dark hours without adequate public scrutiny. It's distressing that several new members of council act in disregard of the professionals in city management, but do not say what the costs will be to our city. As a result of council's action to carelessly reduce city's revenues by $12.6 million, I'm worried that more litter will accumulate along the corridors of our city, creating a negative impression on prospective homebuyers and business owners. I'm worried that because of this ill-considered action, police officers will be in court, not on the street, because they will not have adequate administrative support they need. I'm worried that public works and public safety employees will depart for more just compensation elsewhere, leaving behind broken sidewalks, broken water supply, and declining quality of services. I'm worried that funding for our public schools is jeopardized, leaving fewer adults in hallways and classrooms, fewer experienced teachers to guide and stimulate youthful learning, fewer custodians to maintain and clean healthy environments, fewer adults to provide counsel and empathy when a child experiences loss or confusion or doubt, fewer adults to monitor bathrooms and locker rooms to prevent bullying, violence, and damaged futures. I'm worried because of your drastic reduction in funds, my grandchildren will no longer feel safe in our parks, on our trails or playgrounds, that our freshly revitalized downtown will hollow out and again become a dusty, vacant wind tunnel. I implore you to seriously consider the consequences of your reckless policy based on the anomaly of temporarily increased real estate values. Trust the recommendations of your own municipal specialists and avoid risky strategies to reconcile your budget gap. Hold additional hearings to revisit the tax rate and make this right. Reject short-term political gain and resume responsible governance. Thank you for your time and service to Lynchburg.
Thank you, Mr. Bremer. We'll now hear from a citizen regarding a matter, Shall Nunn, and then after that will be Amanda Linehan and Siobhan Burns.
So Mayor Reed and Council, I am Chal Nunn. I'm a retired physician, a resident of Lynchburg, the former board chair of Humankind, and I'm the chair of the Development Committee of the Academy today. Katie and I moved here 24 years ago when I became the Chief Medical Officer of Central. And we moved 3 teenagers to Parkland Drive and E.C. Glass High School. I knew Central was a great health system, but what convinced us to come was the quality of Lynchburg City Schools. We came from a place where the real estate tax was 62 cents. And the quality of city services reflected that. I was an elected school board there and worked with these limited resources and made hard decisions so I can identify with these long and difficult meetings. And I appreciate you serving on council and staying up late as you do. We love Lynchburg. Just look at what's happened since we came here. Craddock Terry, Bluff Walk, the Lofts Restaurant, the Virginian, the Academy. I can go on and on, but I'm extremely proud of my city and what is accomplished through measured investment and collaboration. This would not have happened without city council leadership and city leadership. I give Kim Payne and Rachel Flynn a lot of kudos for their vision in moving Lynchburg forward when we first came here. Every encounter I've ever had with a city employee has been fabulous. And I think most of that is related to the positive culture that exists with city staff, and Wynn and Greg, you guys have continued that. In my forced retirement due to Parkinson's disease, I've developed a leadership coaching business where I base my work on 2 of my values, frugality and building relationships. Yes, Jeff, I am frugal, and I think an 18% increase in my property tax, personal real estate tax in 2020 combined with a 17% increase with a new rate of 105 is just a little much. Felt a little high to me. My other value is relationship building, and we need leadership that bridges their differences and values relationships. There's a great diversity of ideas on this council. And if you can find a way to bridge and connect those ideas, we all benefit. Yes, our property tax rate is a little high as proposed. Sorry, Warner. Yes, the budget and city operations are complicated. I understand the budget and tax rate as voters is intended to be neutral. But the perception is that it's not. Yes, there may be waste in city, school, and school operation, but now with our experience working remotely, COVID is the perfect time to revisit how we work and teach and how we get emails into the record. So I ask you as council and city leadership to collaborate on the budget and make careful changes, follow your ordinances and policies, and use your diversity of ideas to show city employees in our community a positive way forward. We don't want to lose staff or the gains in quality of life that we've achieved. I believe it's going to take a negotiated tax rate somewhere below 105, but not quite as anemic as 89 cents. I have lived and served in a city with a low tax rate, and it didn't work. The city schools suffered, the city suffered. We couldn't compete with our neighbors on quality of life, and the people left, just like Katie and I did. We are competing with Monroe and Charlottesville, not the counties around us. Please reconsider the depth of your cut and continue the investment in our community.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Now hear from a citizen regarding a matter, Ms. Amanda Linehan.
Hello, nice to see y'all again. I'm glad it's not so late this time. My name is Amanda Linehan, and I'm here to speak again on the budget proposal. A little after midnight a week ago, Councilman Hagelson motioned to vote after hearing some of the public speak out on a tax cut, and was advised this may be an illegal vote by our district attorney. My representative, Councilor Feraldi, later spoke. He said, and I quote, "I'm going to say this bluntly and candidly. Since January, I said I wanted to look at the budget numbers and understand where we are. And right when I saw those dollars, I said, that's it. 89 cents is where I want to be. I'm going to vote for 89 cents. Meanwhile, constituents like me sat in these seats outraged as us city service members were cast aside on a vote you council members didn't allow us to speak on. As cited by the mayor, the agenda called for a public hearing. You were down a council member, and you decided to weasel a vote in the middle of the night. I finally spoken, about 1 a.m., and now I'm finding that my voice fell upon deaf ears, in the ears of my own councilman. Because 89 cents is where these members want to be. Councilman Feraldi, you cited that 64% of the people who spoke were in favor of 89 cents. What you neglected to state was how many city service members were waiting to speak for the third point on the budget topic. We waited past a bomb threat, past an out-of-order vote in the dead of night, and still, between the hours of 1 a.m. and 2:30 a.m., you heard as we pleaded to have our voices heard. I got home around 3 a.m., and then I woke with a smile on my face to teach my students. All of the teachers who remained did the same thing. You know what I heard throughout it all? Miss Linehan, why are you so tired? Miss Linehan, why did you stay so late? Miss Linehan, what is the point? Miss Linehan, will they even listen to you? More whys. Meanwhile, I wrote on my chalkboard, review what footnotes are, and did a little dance, because that's the only way that they will remember them. I stand up here not only for my fellow teachers who deserve a livable wage, but for my students who ask why. For my students who are learning to stand up and speak against what is wrong and for what is right. 89 cents may be where you want it to be, but us city service workers need your support. We need the tax to stand at 105. We need you to hear us and the city manager. A why for you? Why won't you listen? What you did was wrong, council, and we are here to speak out against it. At least so I never have to ask myself, why didn't I try? Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear from a citizen regarding a matter, I'm sorry if I'm butchering this, Sayaban Burns? Shaban, I'm sorry. And then Nicole Sanders and Emily Kelly.
Siobhan's not in attendance.
Oh, no? Okay. Sorry about that, if you're listening, Siobhan. Nicole Sanders, then Emily Kelly, and then Gail Goldsmith.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, members of council. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak tonight. I'm going to keep it fairly brief because I just have 2 main points, and I live in Ward 3 with Mr. Helgeson. One point I wanted to bring up was this issue of procedure, and I've spoken about this in front of you all before. I'm very disturbed by this council's, this iteration of council's lack of regard for proper procedure. Votes are called, agendas are amended at the very last minute. For example, the agenda was amended just this evening. Just this evening, Councilmember Feraldi asked to amend the agenda to discuss procedures and policies. That was not on the agenda. That is not something people were prepared to think about or to speak about. And so I would implore council once again to think about proper procedure, because really this boils down to democracy. How on earth can citizens respond to council and have council respond back to citizens in a thoughtful manner if we don't know what's going on? There are sunshine laws passed all over this country to prevent these types of procedural abuses. So I would wish that City Council would take more care in when they call votes, how they publish agendas, and how citizens are allowed to speak and to respond. And on that note, I would also very much reiterate my fellow citizens' request for another public hearing on these tax rates. The last council, very bravely, I think, had a large public hearing on the Second Amendment Sanctuary City at E.C. Glass High School, so everybody could attend. It was also until, 1 or 2 in the morning. And so I would implore you guys to follow that type of transparency as well. And my second point has to do with the other 50% of Lynchburg citizens. We've been talking a lot about property tax rates. Property tax rates would help me, I'm a homeowner, but what about the other 50% of the city that doesn't own property? I would like to hear some plans from City Council about how they plan to continue to address poverty and other issues in our city when we don't have a tax base or tax revenue that can help provide programming and services for people who don't own property in this city. So, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Now hear from a citizen regarding a matter, Ms. Emily Kelly.
Good evening. My name is Emily Kelly, and I am a math teacher here in LCS. Last week, I listened as parents, teachers, community members spoke about the funding for schools and needing funds for a wide variety of items and staff members. At school the next day, I shared with the students where I had been and why I was exhausted. We talked about the numbers behind teacher salaries, which we've done before, and why the need for increase, not only for the teachers, but for all of city employees. In middle school math courses, we talk about the increase and decrease of items being sold. We talk about tax items in stores and salaries. Students asked if I thought we were going to get a raise, and I spoke that it was unclear based on the approved tax. I was not sure that the city would have funds for our raise. And students asked what would happen if we did not get a raise. And in my calmest, clearest voice, I said, I don't know. Those who know me know that these are my least favorite words to tell students. I don't know if we'll have enough adults to cover classes. I don't know if we'll have enough adults to clean our buildings. I don't know if we'll have enough adults to cook the meals and serve them. I don't know if we'll have enough adults to get you to and from school and extracurricular activities. And I don't know if we will have enough adults to make the school run in an effective manner. Notice I did not say qualified adults, just enough. In order for LCS to attract qualified adults, we need to have a competitive salary. LCS's salary is not competitive. I did a little bit of research, and a Bedford teacher with 16 years of experience gets paid $5,000 more than an LCS teacher. A Roanoke City teacher gets paid $12,000 more than an LCS teacher. An Amherst teacher gets $1,000 more than an LCS teacher. LCS needs to attract and retain great teachers and staff, and one way to do that is to increase salaries. The $1,550 is a start in the right direction, and I say start as a 16-year veteran. I only make $5,000 more than a brand new teacher. But that's the battle for the LCS school board. Our children deserve great teachers. Don't deprive them of getting the very best by not attracting the very best. I'm going to take my hat off as an LCS teacher for a minute, and I'm going to put it on as a mom. As a parent of an employee, I am concerned. My son has worked for LCS since January of 2022 as a custodian and makes less than $15 an hour. He has been saving his money, but real estate prices in Lynchburg, there is no way at that price he can move out on his own and live independently. Our food workers, bus drivers, school staff, and maintenance staff are essential for a building to run smoothly, and all employees deserve a livable wage.
Thank you. Now hear from a citizen representative regarding a matter, Gail Goldsmith, then Courtney Sinha and Kelsey Molsteed.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Council, I'm glad to be here with you again. My wife and I moved here from cities that invest in parks, invest in schools, cities that recognize that economic development happens through making the quality of life attractive to employers and citizens. So I want to know, why was this ludicrous tax rate picked in opposition to the city manager's budget? I was here so long last time that I aged a year and turned 33. No, really. April 5th was my birthday. I am particularly thankful to the hardworking LCS teachers who stayed up late on a school night to be here and speak. It was a teacher that first questioned how this budget would affect the children of this city, because council members who proposed a ludicrous 89 cents haven't explained any of the consequences of that proposal. Her question still stands. What is the effect on children? What is the effect on the people who are waiting for the housing solutions offered in the city manager's budget? Who will lose their jobs? Why do you want to increase unemployment? I would love to hear exactly about our lovely city they would like to cut, defund, and disinvest from. The city managers, the chief financial officer, and the city budget office presented a well-researched budget. Their well-researched plan invests in housing solutions, schools, parks, and quality of life. And speaking of research, I read up on how the city manager was hired, and here's a really great quote from a supporter of the hiring from the News in Advance. I'll read it here. Winter is a change agent, charismatic leader, effective, humble, and clearly has a vision for our local government. Hiring Winter will almost certainly be one of the most influential decisions I will have made. Who said that? Did anyone guess Chris Feraldi? I'm also offended by how the 4 council members proposing disinvestment from our city talk as if this disinvestment is just generosity, as if it is significant relief. I don't want our citizens to be conned by that rhetoric. It's not generosity to taxpayers, it only affects homeowners, not all taxpayers. It's not even generous to homeowners. My wife and I own our own home, and we would receive $20 a month back. I love that our taxes support schools, parks, and core city services. Don't pretend $20 a month is real and significant generosity and real relief. As a pastor and a Christian, real generosity, real integrity, and real flourishing for all people matters deeply to me. I ask that City Council model integrity and governance, not model backroom dealings, not continue to showcase the disrespect and clear, gleeful disregard for citizens that I saw for 4 members of this council who then pressed on even when told this maneuver was illegal. I am glad to thank the members of council who have insisted on integrity and clarity in this process. Don't defund us. Please continue investing in our beautiful city and our amazing citizens and representation for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Courtney Sinha?
Good evening, Mayor Reed, Vice Mayor Feraldi, and members of City Council. My name is Courtney Sinha, and I am a resident of Lynchburg City. I am speaking tonight in support of the city manager's proposed budget and in opposition to the tax rate cut that was voted on last week. As a longtime resident of Lynchburg, I have seen our city grow and prosper, and I believe that the budget as developed and presented by the city manager will help us continue on this path. I have lived here now for nearly 2 decades. My family and I have established roots here. My older daughter attended Sandusky Elementary, Sandusky Middle, Heritage High School, and CVCC before finishing up her education at Centris College of Nursing. She now works at one of the local hospitals, giving back to the city by serving the people of this community. Her daughter is an LCS student. My wife and I were married in this beautiful city. We attend church here, and now our youngest child is a happy kindergartner at Sandusky Elementary. I may not be from here, but the roots we have planted here are now inextricably woven throughout the fabric of this community. We choose to live in the city, and we chose to buy a house in this city because we value the amenities and services that city life provides, and we are willing to pay the necessary taxes and fees to support them. If other people prefer county taxes with fewer services and having to come into the city to enjoy our amenities, then they should live in the counties. I do not appreciate the attempt to turn Lynchburg in that direction. I've seen so much change, growth, and development in the almost 20 years I have lived here, and I love the city that Lynchburg has become. The city manager has taken a balanced and responsible approach to crafting this budget, and I trust that he has considered all available options to ensure it is fiscally sound. This proposed budget includes important investments in public education, public safety, infrastructure, and other essential services. I was formerly a city employee for over a decade. I believe strongly in the need for social services, police services, the sheriff's department, and 911 services. By approving this budget, you would be making a critical investment in the future of our city and ensuring that Lynchburg continues to be a great place to live, work, and play. I am concerned about council's decision not to reschedule the public hearing or hold a second one after the bomb threat incident. I believe that council missed a critical opportunity to allow those who couldn't stay for the meeting to express their views and concerns. Additionally, council's decision to vote on the most controversial element of the budget deep in the night when few were watching was disappointing. For the ones who were able to stay, you completely disenfranchised their voices when you chose to hold an unscheduled vote against the recommendation of the city attorney before hearing comments on all aspects of the budget process. It is disingenuous to pretend that your vote was only about the tax rate when that factor plays directly into the budget process as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now hear from a citizen regarding a matter, Kelsey Molseed, followed by Patrick Earl and Solveig Kizeth. Sorry.
Hi, good evening. My name is Kelsey Molseed. I live over near the University of Lynchburg. I'm speaking to you today as a homeowner. My spouse and I own a home. We don't have kids in the school system. We don't use public transportation. It's likely that on average that we utilize the city's public services less than most residents. To that end, I understand and I appreciate that you want to cut taxes. Our city manager has put together a budget proposal that does just that, while managing to support city services and a pay raise that is desperately needed, particularly for our teachers. I do not understand why we suddenly can't trust the city manager with his version of a budget that to me seems like a good compromise between lowering taxes and funding public services. Instead, some of you are basically ignoring that proposal and are proposing instead such a drastic tax cut that there was no way that we could support the things that this city and any city needs and will always need. It seems obvious to me that important programs would lose funding with this budget, and that city and school employees could lose jobs. So I'm curious, how do job cuts meet your definition of economic relief? I'm curious how offering some of the lowest teacher salaries of any city in the state fits into your view of a city where people want to live and stay. You claim you care about public safety, and so I'm curious if you've ever looked into the relationship between school funding and public safety. I encourage you to do that. There is tons and tons of research showing that better funded schools correlate to lower crime rates. I'd be happy to send some examples of that to you. I know you're eager to rush this through. Last week's illegitimate vote sent that message loud and clear. I think, by the way, you might have picked up on this already, but the anger over that move is what brought a lot of us here today. I urge you instead to slow down, to think about the consequences of what you're proposing, and to show this city the respect it deserves. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I hear from a citizen regarding a matter. Patrick Earl.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and the rest of council. My name is Patrick Earl. I'm a constituent of Ward 1. Today, I'm here to express my concern about the drop of property tax rate from $1.11 to 89 cents. As I thought about what I would say today, I was truly at a loss. And as most people who know me not having an opinions is not something that happens. And all I could think of is why. Why would 4 members of council, 2 of which have only been, 4 months into your tenure, never passed a budget, decide to ignore 3 other members, 1 of which of their own party, and a slew of city planning and financial professionals to, according to the city's attorney, unlawfully pass this ordinance? I don't know why. The one word that comes to mind is hubris. Because even campaign promises are not mutually exclusive from well-informed decisions. You have a wonderful budget here that fulfills all of your promises. Why rush? Why silence half of a public hearing just to do this? Long-held grudges? Fanaticism? But it doesn't matter why, because this is where we are. And I'm not one to take on doomsday scenarios or hypotheticals, so all I want to truly ask and hold you accountable is, do you know? Have you asked well-informed professionals like the ones in this room, what will happen to Lynchburg when the property tax sinks to 89 cents? What do you know? And I'm not talking about some mental math or late night scribbles or Excel spreadsheets. I'm talking about talking to city managers. I'm talking about talking to department heads, accountants. Do you know what will happen to our police, our firefighters, our 911 response workers, which we just honored today? Do you know what will happen to our schools and our educators? Do you know what will happen to our parks? Because there's a lot of people doing math here, some of which are super, super smart. You cannot do it. You can't support them all. So who gets cut? So all I'm asking, if this wasn't here, I would get on my knees and beg you, I'm humbly on my knees, please reconsider. I am a guy that gets things wrong all the time. It's okay, we make mistakes. True leadership is knowing when you do.
Thank you. We will now hear from a citizen regarding a matter. Solvig Kizeth? No? Okay. Sorry if I butchered your name, sir. Hear from a citizen regarding a matter. Nero. Y'all are just messing with me now. Rasan Nayagam. Can I just call you Nero? Yes. Okay, I got that one.
Nero, I've known you since 2017. I'm not sure I can say it right still. So.
That was very good, thank you.
I'm Neela Lasnaga. My husband and I moved to Lynchburg from the DC area in 2003. We came here for work to build our careers after graduate school. We thought we would be here for 3 years tops, but here we are 20 years later. Work brought us here, but what kept us here is the quality of life. We knew the schools were good, the beautiful parks and trails, and excitingly, to our surprise, Lynchburg started to take off economically in the mid-2000s. And with it, the burg became a lot more interesting to live in. When out-of-town friends visit us now, we are proud to take them out and show off all the investments that have been made in Lynchburg. I urge the majority on council to support the city manager's budget. Do not lower the property tax rate below the 105 rate. You may have won a majority in November. However, council members Helgeson, Feraldi, Misjuns, Taylor, you are undermining the democratic process when you've already decided, as of March 21st, before hearing from citizens, what the tax rate would be. You made this decision in a backroom deal without conferring with the other council members. You subverted the democratic process and input from citizens on an important matter of substance, the city budget. You are also recklessly ignoring the professional recommendations of the city manager, the chief financial officer, and the city budget office. I urge you to be transparent. Have the courage now to tell us what services you want to cut from the budget for the $16.5 million or the 7% reduction in the city's operating fund you seem bent on achieving. You owe that to residents before you go down this mistaken path. Mr. Misjuns, you are suing the city for $1 million over an employment dispute. You have a dire conflict of interest here. You should immediately recuse yourself from budget-related votes for as long as your lawsuit is active. Reducing the property tax rate from $1.11 to 89 cents would save me $660 annually. But I would rather the city keep this money and provide the services and amenities that I have come to love about this place, okay? We are not the county. If I wanted to live in a county, I would have moved there years ago. Your budget cuts will make Lynchburg the loser, as fewer people will want to move and stay here, and we will lose people to small, growing, dynamic cities.
Thank you.
Do not go down this path and reverse
Thank
20
you.
years of hard-earned progress. Thank you.
so much, I appreciate it. We'll now hear from a citizen regarding a matter, Samantha City, then Paul Henderson and April Watson.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, and members of City Council. My name is Sam City. I live in Ward 3 in the Fort Hill neighborhood. I'm sad to see Jeff gone. Let me first state that I am not against tax cuts. I'm not against it at all if it makes sense. What I am against is the deep tax cut that was voted by council last week. In the past, many members of the current council called for accountability on our city leaders. Today, I'm calling for accountability tonight. I find it very concerning that, one, the city manager's recommendation, who we hired to do the hard work of putting the budget together, was completely dismissed, and two, a vote was made where there was no indication in the meeting agenda that a vote would be scheduled. Due to the threat last week, not everyone was able to participate in the democratic process of voicing their concerns at the public hearing, and yet during COVID, there were members of council who complained about citizens not having a voice due to the city hall capacity limit at that time. How was that any different? Additionally, it seemed that a decision was made even before the public hearing began. We've already echoed this before with previous speakers. I echo Mayor Reed's sentiment that she said last week. Why even have a public hearing if the decision was already made? So here's the question. Why? Why 89? And why the rush? How is it that council concluded that 89 cents is the best, whereas our city manager, who I can't emphasize enough, We've paid as taxpayers to do the job of preparing a budget. If we really want to save money, we might as well fire the city manager department and have you guys do the budget. Has this been thought through on how this impacts the city in the long term beyond this year? How are you able to fund all the services the city offers with such a low rate? If it's reduced to wasteful spending that I hear a lot, then where is the spending being wasteful? Is it wasted in utilities, garbage, education? And for full transparency, my husband's a teacher at Heritage High School, #1 Big Orange Country, and my children go to Sheffield Elementary. I am deeply concerned about whether or not my child will still have an IEP due to these budgets. The whole thing seems like a very rash decision, and that simply doesn't make sense from a budgetary perspective. I implore for another public hearing. I implore to use the recommendation by city manager of $1.05 and to really listen to the city manager's recommendation, because that's what we hired him for. Thank you.
Thank you. Now hear from a citizen regarding a matter. Paul Henderson, please.
Should we wait? Thank you. My name is Paul Henderson. I live out on Boonesboro Drive.
Should we wait for you?
Hmm?
Sorry, I shouldn't have said that. Go ahead.
Did you want to wait until Councilman
Oh,
Bill
no,
comes on?
not
Okay,
particularly.
go ahead.
I am a retired minister of the Christian Church Disciples of Christ, have lived here in the city of Lynchburg for over 30 years. First came to Lynchburg when I came as a freshman at Lynchburg College in 1964. Ministers are known sometimes for having bandwagons, things and issues that they feel are important. They have agendas they push, they have goals and ideals that they try to achieve. I don't come today with a bandwagon. But it appears that some members of council have an agenda and a bandwagon. What is it? What are they? I have not heard them declared, mentioned, or anything. What is it? Reducing the rate to 89 cents would be a 16% cut from that suggested by the city manager. When you add that to inflation, that comes out to a 19 to 23% cut in the value of what the money will purchase. Inevitably, that will reduce the number of teachers, the number of police, the number of persons who supervise the jail. It will reduce the number of city workers picking up trash, the number of trucks that we will be able to buy to remove snow, which we haven't had any much this year, but when it comes. It also will increase by reducing the number of teachers. It will increase the teacher-student ratio, which is very important. For there are many students who need special help. There are many people of our city who need special help. For 14 years, I worked in a group home providing direct care. Our city will suffer. The people who are the poorest of the poor will suffer the most. The people who are rejected, oppressed, said, go hide yourself somewhere. There are many other things I could say.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we now hear from a citizen regarding a matter. April Watson. I don't see her. Patricia Bauer, followed by Jeff Rosner and Leslie King.
Good evening.
Hello.
I'm Pat Bauer, and I live on VES Road. I was very surprised and alarmed when council voted on the real estate tax last week. Before hearing citizen comments and during a public hearing when it was not and should not have been on the agenda. How can you make an intelligent decision on a tax rate before you have fully explored the implications of that rate for the city's basic services? Such a drastic cut, 20%, will send a message to prospective employees, companies, and residents that Lynchburg has given up on the pursuit of excellence and must give up on important projects. I'm especially concerned about the budget for the schools. My family moved to Lynchburg 43 years ago, and we bought a house in the city because the schools had an excellent reputation. Our experience with our daughters confirmed that the reputation was well-deserved, and I was happy to serve on the school board in the 1980s. There have been so many changes in our society, culture, and world since then, but I still see the city schools investing in our children and doing their best to pursue their motto, every child by name and by need. But meeting the need of every child cannot be realized without resources, adequate staffing, and adequate dollars to attract and retain talented people, not just teachers, but every other category of personnel required to run a school system, from bus drivers, custodians, and cafeteria workers to IT experts, accountants, and human resource professionals. I urge City Council, I think it's essential that all employees get a 5% raise in this budget, considering the current inflation rate. And I don't believe this would be possible if the real estate rate is reduced to 89 cents. I urge City Council to reconsider this rate before it is finalized by ordinance and damages the future of our city. Thank you for considering my plea.
Thank you. I will now hear from a citizen regarding matter. Jeff Rosner.
Thank you. I'm Jeff Rosner, and I'm a resident of Lynchburg. My comment is about incorrect information in the city budget process. First, it might appear that reducing the real estate tax rate is the only way to deal with the result of increased assessments for low-income people. But property owners can file assessment appeals. Also, some low-income property owners can file for real estate tax relief. City Council should consider local action to expand low-income real estate tax relief and also include state expansion where needed in the next legislative agenda. And current low-income tax relief and possible expansion should be considered in setting the tax rate. Second, in a budget and brews session that I attended, it was explained that the surplus is actually smaller than some have said, and that part of it has to go into a rainy day fund. Third, there have been some statements that taxes are driving people away from Lynchburg. These statements are contradicted by the census, the increase in Lynchburg's population. Fourth, Councilor Feraldi has made an issue in school budget discussions of a choice between supporting the central office and supporting instruction. That choice has clearly already been made because the budget for administration and the central office part of that is actually smaller, but the budget for administration is only 8 or 9%. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now here for a citizen regarding a matter, Leslie King, followed by Annalisa Rosner, and then Owen Cardwell.
Hello, members of council. I'm here to talk about the budget and the proposed tax cut to 89 cents, which I do not support. Originally, I wasn't sure what I was going to say because everyone else has spoken so eloquently. But I was watching last week the council meeting. Part of the reason is because of some of the work that I've been doing in the community, meeting with residents around flooding in their neighborhoods and heat risks with the change in extreme weather events. And at one meeting, I encouraged the residents to show up to the city council session because it's been clear to me through the conversations with residents, in particular in Ward 2, that they don't want less services, they want more services. And through our conversation in these meetings, it's also clear that they have not been paying attention to what's going on here. So I encourage them to come to this, city council meeting to speak up. Well, one lovely senior citizen who was at the meeting said, well, why should we come? Because they have already made up their mind. And I thought, well, that does happen. But you could still come and voice your perspective as a citizen, as a resident of this community, and other people can see you, because the people who are supposed to represent you may not hear you, but there may be other people who then will speak out as well. So to say that I'm disappointed with undermining the process, the democratic process, but people have asked questions about and said this, and my question is, do you even care? Do you care? Do you respect all citizens of this city? I'm a resident, I've lived here all my life. I went through public schools, I had a wonderful education, great teachers, great relationships. I appreciate the quality of life in this community. The other thing that struck me was former Mayor Whitaker said about vision. What is your vision? Do you have a vision? Not a vision to destroy and destruct and lower the quality of life for citizens in Lynchburg, but a vision that encompasses everyone. And perhaps your political ideology does not allow you to have that kind of vision. I mean, the truth is, maybe you don't care. Maybe you don't, maybe you do.
Thank you. We'll now hear from a citizen regarding a matter, Annalisa Rosner.
Good evening, Mayor Reed and Vice Mayor Veraldi and council members. My name is Annalisa Rosner, and my husband and I moved to Lynchburg 2008. We both are retired. We have seen tremendous changes in the city during the last 15 years. In my opinion, thanks to the forward-looking previous city councils and also city management. For one, they have brought people and businesses downtown, arts, events, restaurants, hotels, etc. There were not many in 2008. The community market was a highlight when we came here. And of course, it still is a wonderful thing. I remember the Bluff Walk development was pretty controversial and had its opponents. What a treasure and economic engine that has turned out to be. In the interest of time, I just want to mention one more accomplishment, the new Heritage High School. Since I want to emphasize the tremendous importance of public education. It's the cornerstone of the democratic society. Let's be supportive of our schools. Pay them what they are worth, and not just always criticize them for performance, for wanting money for stuff. What's that stuff? And suggestions to kick out students, misbehaving students. Kick them out where? To the prison pipeline, or out stealing guns for careless gun owners' cars, to private schools. The local public schools have, fortunately, alternative schools. And those stuff and kicking out students' comments I heard during one of the recent budget meetings. So they pushed my buttons a little bit. So words matter. As I see it, schools add to the safety of the city by providing one supportive environment to our young people. We cannot just police ourselves from violence in the city. Many other wraparound services are needed. So my main concern and reason why I'm here is that this past forward-looking trend may end with this new council, based on what I have seen and heard so far. I hope I'm wrong. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We'll now hear from a group representative regarding a matter. Dr. Owen Cardwell, you'll have 5 minutes. Please restate your name and locality, and then we will have Rebecca Fry and then Sarah Beck.
Mayor Reed, Vice Mayor Feraldi, members of City Council. My name is Owen Cardwell, Jr. I reside in Ward 4. Tonight I'm representing the Lynchburg Voters League, but I'm also pastor of Diamond Hill Baptist Church and the Roselle Schewel Distinguished Chair at the University of Lynchburg. I'm here tonight to speak in support of the real estate rate reduction of $1.05 proposed by the city manager. Last week, 4 members of council, after having met privately to craft an agreement to set the rate reduction of 89 cents, attempted to vote on said reduction. First of all, I want to inform you that the Voters League will be filing a Freedom of Information request for disclosure of how this came about. There is suspicion that the process might have been in violation of the open meeting policy. Secondly, we have been here before when the tax rate proposed was so low that city staff had to be furloughed, services curtailed, and the citizens suffered. We know what the proposed budget based on a $1.05 rate looks like, but other than promises that essential services would not be reduced, you have not produced a budget based on the 89-cent rate. The citizens deserve to see that budget prior to any firm decision being made. It has been deduced that such a drastic reduction would mean no additional funding for Lynchburg City Schools, no salary increase for city employees, no compression adjustment, no pay progression for Lynchburg Fire Department employees, no pay increase for 911 telecommunicators, no new positions added, and a budget reduction level of somewhere around $12 million. There needs to be another public hearing once that new budget is produced so that all of us can see what we're actually getting. The home ownership rate for the city is 43%. Of course, that means that 57% of the housing in the city is rental and investment property for somebody. In Diamond Hill, the home ownership rate is around 28%, and that number is skewed because of the historic Diamond Hill residents. When we expand out to the whole of Ward 2, the rate is only 15%. And some of this rental property is owned by slumlords who have created illegal rooming houses. The city currently has only one housing inspector. The city manager's proposed budget would have added at least 2 additional inspectors who could monitor and compel landowners to maintain their properties and not pimp off their renters. This real estate tax reduction then only benefits homeowners and landlords, which leaves the burden of lost services and support on a significant portion of our populace. I would like to call this behind-the-scene vote ill-advised, but I fear that it is ill-intended. I remind you that even though the last 3 elected council persons got a majority of the vote, the highest percentage of the vote was for Mayor Reed at roughly 20%. That means that 80% of those who voted did not vote for any of you. That hardly gives you a mandate, and it increases your responsibility to represent all the people, particularly since you ran at large. Otherwise, if 4 of you have already made a blood agreement, let's stop the charade of a fair budget discussion. Let's just cancel the meetings proposed for the remainder of April and May. I returned home to Lynchburg to serve the city. Let's keep Lynchburg a Class A city by serving the needs of all citizens, particularly those with the greatest need. We are our brother's keeper. Beware that you're not toying with turning the city of Lynchburg from a Class A city to a stop on the way to somewhere else. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now hear from a citizen regarding a matter, Rebecca Fry, followed by Sarah Beck and Shelley Blades.
You guys may not be able to see me. I need a stool.
We can see you.
Good evening, Mayor Reed, Vice Mayor Feraldi, members of council. My name is Rebecca Fry. I'm a citizen in Ward 1, where I moved in 2010 from Amherst County. In 2019, my son went to kindergarten, where Miss Pickering helped him transition to life at Bedford Hills. It wasn't just her. The staff, including Mrs. Collins, Mr. Merkel, Mrs. Arp, Mrs. Edwards, and many others, continually made an impression on us. I was lucky enough to serve on the PTO, working directly with Principal Steele, one of the most dedicated administrators out there. The team at Bedford Hills expertly met each challenge the pandemic threw their way. They even brought readers back up to grade level in record numbers under 8 months through an innovative program developed by one of their own. Our educators are truly amazing. Despite all of this, we experienced a new challenge in 2nd grade. I witnessed firsthand the effects of not having appropriate administrative, behavioral, and support staff in our schools. A new to LCS student needed services beyond what is provided in a traditional classroom. Even with one of the most experienced teachers in this classroom, the classroom suffered tremendous learning loss in an unsafe environment for 3 months. I don't bring this to your attention to highlight an issue in our school system. It's quite the opposite. I share this as a reality of what happens when you eliminate administrative and staff positions, something I've heard several of you say you plan to do. What occurred here was solely due to lack of appropriate staff to process and transition this child. No one, not the teacher, not the child that needed the support, nor the other children in the classroom, deserved to have this situation happen. I know many of you have been personally invited to come and walk our schools and show up, and you've not yet taken that opportunity to do so. How can you even begin to fix something you don't know or understand? I watched the April 4th hearing and was appalled to learn some of the characteristics of our city. 3rd highest foster care numbers in the state, 2nd to last pay for our educators. This is not the city I moved into. Hearing the information presented from the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office, the victim advocates team, the social workers, the public safety organizations, the educators, and all the other citizens changed my opinion on Manager Bendel's proposed tax rate and budget, leaving me even more in favor of it. Every member of our team needs to be supported, not just with words, but with dollars to effectively do their job. Making backroom deals independent of citizen feedback is unethical and irresponsible. On the eve of Thomas Jefferson's birthday, let me remind you of this quote: "The care of human life and happiness and not their destruction is the first and only object of good government."
Thank you very much. We will now hear from a citizen regarding a matter, Sarah Beck, followed by Shelley Blades and Thomas Brennan.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Beck, and I am a Lynchburg homeowner and a parent of 2 children enrolled in Lynchburg City Schools. Others have spoken eloquently tonight about the risk to city growth if the council reduces the property tax to 89 cents. I want to specifically focus and advocate here tonight for competitive compensation and resources for our public school teachers, staff, and also, and perhaps even more importantly, accountability from this council regarding this crucial matter. Every child in Lynchburg has a right to a free and accessible education, and I wish to remind each of you that the city schools do not serve only children of homeowners. In fact, our schools serve all kinds of families: renters, homeowners, families that are unemployed, some that are unhoused, parents who are grappling with addiction, mental illness, food instability, immigrant families for whom English is not their first language, and families with disabilities. The more challenges families are facing, the higher the risk is to children for poor academic and social outcomes. But you know what moderates the risk in the scientific literature? A single relationship with a trusted adult. Maybe it's a parent, but I know many of us can probably think of coaches, guidance counselors, or maybe even teachers. We're making it pretty hard, a really difficult job. We're making it even harder by not fairly compensating our teachers. Tonight, I ask the council to commit and to be held accountable by us, the community, for fully funding the public schools minimally at the level laid out in the proposed budget by the city manager. I ask each of you to look closely at what you personally would propose cutting from the LCS line items if the property tax cut goes through. Is it special education? Is it support for at-risk children? Teacher compensation? As a community that wishes to grow and thrive, we cannot afford to make those kinds of cuts. The future of the city is at stake if we decide to do that. Our city's most at-risk children are likely underrepresented here tonight, but we can make sure their right to an excellent education is protected. And I ask each of you to make that commitment here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I hear from a citizen regarding a matter, Shelley Blades.
It's a very long walk from the back. Hi, my name is Shelley Blades, and I'm a resident of Ward 2. I want to express how disappointed I am in the way last Tuesday's public hearing was handled. Members of council chose to continue with the hearing after a prolonged delay due to a bomb threat. Many people could not stay to speak due to family obligations and a concern for their safety after the threat. Council members could have voted to hold another public hearing but chose not to. Instead, council chose to disregard the voice of the community and move forward with a decision that seemed like it was predetermined, rather than under consideration pending the input of the people you are supposed to represent. Reinforcing that suspicion is data that's available on Virginia Public Access Project that reflects all new council members receive significant donations from individuals or groups in real estate and construction. This makes me wonder if City Council is here for people like me or wealthy real estate developers and investors. It is despicable and cowardly for elected officials to advance their own agenda without regard for the voice of the people. I would also like council to explain the consequences of the tax cuts and demonstrate that they understand them. Why are members of council choosing to ignore the city manager, chief financial officer, and the city budget office recommendations? These are the people we have entrusted with our city. They are subject matter experts, and council has treated their input as inconsequential, much like it has the residents of this city. Two of you who are pushing for drastic cuts haven't been on council for more than 4 months, yet you seem to believe you know more than the city manager. It is obvious to any rational person that a massive cut in the city's revenue stream will impact city services, yet you have shown no understanding or interest in the long-term consequences of your actions. Council should show our city respect. There is still time to hold a second hearing and make this right if you wish to gain credibility with the people of Lynchburg. Thank you.
Thank you. Now hear from a citizen regarding the matter, Thomas Brennan.
Good evening. My name is Thomas Brennan. I'm a Lynchburg native, and I live in Ward 2. I want to register both my opposition to the proposed 89-cent real estate tax rate and my concern about the consequences such a change would have on the city budget. I'll be honest that I've been a bit nervous about coming to speak in front of council about this. The intricacies of the budget are intimidatingly dense and complex. For that reason, I am reassured by the fact that the oversight of this process runs through the capable hands of the city manager, chief financial officer, and the city budget office. People to whom we've entrusted the city's financial safety for years and who we can thank for the city's sterling bond rating. They recommend reducing the real estate tax rate to $1.05. I want to know why the members of this council in favor of this change are ignoring this advice. I realize that the majority of you ran on a campaign to cut taxes, and this action is the logical conclusion of those promises. Still, I would hope that you'd feel some sense of obligation to the city as a whole, wanting to see it continue to flourish and grow with enviable public schools, responsive public services, and a rising quality of life for all citizens. Lowering the real estate tax rate will cut over $12 million out of the city budget. For all the decisive action being taken to shove these changes through, there has been a distinct lack of detail about what feels dispensable to these members of council. It's not hard to imagine the resulting disruptions in safety, education, and infrastructure, disruptions that will be easily traced to this decision for years to come. Do you think you'll be able to maintain police and fire pay schedules, recruit and retain good teachers in the school systems, continue the revitalization efforts that attracts visitors, students, professionals, and new businesses to the city? I don't get the sense that the members pushing for these cuts have truly considered the consequences of these changes. And this seems like a costly decision to make for what will ultimately be a cheap political win. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll now hear from a citizen regarding a matter, Darian Sky Montgomery, followed by Maggie Millard and H.C. Eschenroder.
Hello, my name is Darian Montgomery, and I am a resident of Lynchburg, Virginia. I am going to avoid saying what everybody else has said tonight, besides ditto. I completely agree with what everyone has said tonight. But what I will say is that I have been a resident of Lynchburg, Virginia for over 20 years. I grew up in this city. My family has been here for over 5 generations, working, going to school. My grandma ran off Macon when it was a women's college. My grandfather has owned businesses here. So yes, our roots do go very deep here. And though I may not have children in school, I don't own property here. So I don't have so much skin in this game, but I do have what I would consider part-time watchdogs as friends who strongly encouraged me to come here tonight. For those that perhaps don't know about this that's happening, don't understand what the implications may be. So I'm here to give my perspective as someone that grew up here, and that my favorite parts of being here as a young adult, I graduated from high school only 10 years ago, were the parks in this city. I went away to go to college in Richmond and continue to travel around because a lot of the things at the time that I cared the most about when I was growing up here were not strongly valued, such as the arts and parks, education. So I went away to find those things, was brought back here for medical reasons in 2019. And I was very happy to see that there were some changes that had been made. The parks had been expanded, and in some ways they hadn't changed, but it was good to see that they had stayed the same as opposed to getting worse. They were so clean. There were still a lot of people out on the trails. It was a great resource to have, especially during COVID when there was nothing else to do. And as someone that cares a great deal about access to green spaces, I can see that through some studies that having more green spaces improve local tax and increase property value. So if we really want to do something when it comes to property, maybe we should look at putting more funding into our parks. And this is one of the few places that people can go and get exercise, where they can commune with people that does not involve eating, drinking, or sitting. So I would encourage to continue putting more funding into these areas, and of course, including to fund education as well, because as we continue to see in the news, I think one of the most important things right now is to protect our children as much as we possibly can, and that includes making sure that there are qualified adults around them to take care of them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, we'll now hear from a citizen regarding a matter, Maggie Millard.
My name is Maggie Millard. I own a home in Diamond Hill. I have got a third grader in LCS. I don't profess to be an expert on city finances or taxes or how much it takes to effectively manage a city our size. I'm in no position to challenge the recommendations of the professionals tasked to be those experts. I'm no expert. However, neither are you. Our city manager, chief financial officer, and city budget office are experts, and they're recommending a tax rate of $1.05. What do you know that they don't know? Some of you have been on council for just 4 months, and yet somehow you feel confident rejecting the proposal of the people whose job it is to know how much money our city needs to run. So I came to ask, what qualifies you to be more knowledgeable on this topic than the actual experts? I would like to know exactly what experience you're basing your tax rate on, how you plan for our city to function without this money, and exactly what the actual impact on our community will be. You haven't given us these answers. Did you think we wouldn't notice? Did you think we wouldn't care? You were elected by us. You work for us, and you owe us answers. Thank you. Thank you.
Now we'll hear from a citizen regarding a matter, H.C. Eschenroder. Sorry if I messed it up. Did I say it right?
Yeah.
Yay.
Good job. So Mayor Reed, Vice Mayor Feraldi, and City Council members, I'm Cap Eschenroder. Thanks for letting me speak. I'm a retired orthopedic surgeon, and I've been in Lynchburg since 1987, and I've endeavored to strengthen our medical care in the community through my work with Ortho Virginia and Centra Health, and I care deeply about the people of Lynchburg and the surrounding counties, my former patients. I know that City Council is considering the city's budget. I understand that there are many considerations, including the tax burden on city residents, how much money is needed for us to have a strong community, the guidance of city administrators and trust in their input and management skills, and considerations of which citizens among us must bear most of the tax burden. I've never spoken to City Council before. I tend to avoid politics, but I sense that this is a consequential time for our city and perhaps an inflection point. If we err on the side of underfunding our city, I'm concerned the repercussions could be longer lasting. If the city were to lose key services, or educational strength, urgent tax relief action now might have effects that could impact our city for months or even years, taking a long time to reverse. I'm not an expert in city budgets. I'm pleased that you're asking for input from Lynchburg city residents. As a doctor who cared for members of our community for over 30 years and whose children were educated in the city school system, I trust that City Council will move at a pace that allows you to fully understand the impacts of your budgetary decisions, keeping our community and city vibrant for coming years. I'm particularly interested in a city that can attract and retain top-level medical professionals to care for us when we are sick or struggling with health issues. I know something about this topic and can provide additional information if ever needed. Thank you for considering my perspectives, and thank each of you for your service to our city.
Thank you so much. Okay, we'll now hear from a citizen regarding a matter, Jim Wright, followed by Josh Mazzano, Ed Parrish, and our last speaker will be Carl Hutcherson.
Mayor Reed, Vice Mayor Feraldi, and members of council, I am Jim Wright. I am a native of this city. I am a retired physician. I educated my children in the city schools. I'm here tonight to speak to two issues. One is the behavior of council last week when they passed your vote on the 69-cent or 89-cent tax rate in the dark of night without full input from the citizens of this city. You still have a chance to make that right. We have time in the schedule for you to schedule another public hearing on this and take another vote. But you are on track to ignore the recommendations of our city manager, our very excellent city manager, our chief financial officer, and the city budget office. Professionals that we, the citizens, pay to provide this budget. So it seems to me that you're saying that you know better, or that you don't trust the work of our city manager. And I happen to know that that's not true. We have, as someone has pointed out earlier, a AA+ bond rating in this city, and that speaks to the skill of our budget office. We are currently in an inflationary environment in this country. So why in the world are we making a drastic budget cut when we have inflation? Who among you knows what's going to happen 2 years from now? Where will we be? Will we be able to provide city services? Vice Mayor Feraldi, do you know? Have you done your homework? Have you done your due diligence? Have you done the math? Do you know where we're going to be? I don't think so. And I think the same goes for Mr. Taylor. Mr. Taylor, you've been on council for less than 4 months, and yet you voted for this over the advice of your city manager. Same goes for Mr. Mischens. I just don't understand it. Election to public office does not make you an expert. And yet you're willing to ignore the advice of the professionals on your staff. What happens if 2 years from now we need more money?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Can I hear from a citizen regarding a matter? Josh Mazzano? Not here? Okay, Ed Parrish?
Thank you, Mayor Reed, Vice Mayor Feraldi, members of council, citizens of Lynchburg, and particularly city staff. I found something I was trying to figure out. When I heard what had happened, I knew that I had to stand up. I haven't spoken to city council anywhere before. But I found something in the budget. It's a Distinguished Budget Presentation Award presented to the city of Lynchburg, Virginia for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2022. And it was by the Government Finance Officers Association. It's amazing. I think the kind of staff that we had. I had the privilege some years ago of being on an advisory committee for the Planning Commission with Tom Martin and Marja Upshur, and it was amazing education. We struggle with the brownfields in Lynchburg. We struggle with whether to put up electronic signs, billboards or not. And made advice to the city on that. There are 297 pages of weeds in this budget. And our city staff goes through those weeds, and they cull them, and they care for them, and they care because they represent people. And it's not just people and individual agendas, but it's the spirit of the city. And the spirit of the city has changed amazingly in the last 20 years. But and it's been a privilege for me and my wife to be back in the city. I live in a house that was built in 1947, 37, yeah, and it's actually paid off, the mortgage. But I planted 2 trees in the front yard 2 weeks ago because those trees about that big. This budget represents planting trees, and if we choke the budget by not respecting the city manager's advice, those trees won't make it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll now hear from a citizen regarding a matter. Carl Hutcherson. Mr. Hutcherson, you're the last speaker on the list.
Amen. Madam Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, thank you so much for the opportunity. First of all, Madam Mayor, I want to applaud you for your reasoned approach to governance during the time you served on council. Like everyone else here, I have concern that everyone has really expressed the minutia that needs to, I believe, be said. I too heard Jim Whitaker, who was a Republican colleague of mine, former mayor of the city, who also asked the question last week, what is the plan that you have? And since we can't always get the plan by coming here, we're going to start inviting people to come back into the community to explain their plan for doing the things that they do. I also am reminded that our city manager has a team, a deputy manager, an assistant manager, and others who have been mentioned, who work diligently, who work hard every day for the citizens of Lynchburg. I'm reminded that one councilman said that the city manager works for the council, or works for us. Well, us is us. It's all of us. We are all tax-paying citizens in the city of Lynchburg. But there's one overriding thing that I would like to leave with you, because everything else I believe tonight has been said appropriately. I'm reminded of a universal proverb which states, where there is no vision, the people perish. I remind you that you are part of the people.
Thank you, Mr. Hutcherson. Okay, we will now move on to the added portion of the agenda, which is the rules of procedure.
Madam Mayor, I would
Yes.
motion that council reaffirm our rules of procedure, and I would speak to that motion if I would have a second.
Second. Okay.
In speaking to the motion, I want to commend the Democrats of Lynchburg for finally waking up from the shell that we put them in November. Kind of surprised it took this long, but I borderline have a migraine from the amount of inaccuracies that have been stated tonight, and timelines all over the place, and I really don't have the desire to explain all of them because it's all out there. I've been in 8 schools since I've been elected, toured many of them. I've been a part of countless conversations with folks in the community about the needs of our schools. No wonder I forget if it was Mr. Underwood or somewhere else, Texas, yes, they have that level of property tax rate because guess what? They don't have a state income tax. Conservatives turned out last week in droves, calling on council to lower taxes, all within our rules of procedure. By my count, 2/3, yes, of the folks who came out last week supported this direction. Sadly, just as in Washington, the liberals of Lynchburg seemingly get their own set of rules rules for thee, not for me. Even after expired deadlines, duplicated opportunities to speak, tonight, 30 plus spoke before council with nearly identical political philosophies and talking points because council's rules were amended in the shadows. If this council is going to be criticized for asking the manager to produce a memo about what a certain situation would look like and call that unethical, I wonder what unethical or how unethical would be applied to council amending its rules of procedure without public debate, without public oversight in any capacity. Is anyone else intrigued that seemingly no individual spoke differently at all tonight? No. Worse, they were amended with no vote. No such action was primarily advocated by members who were a part of a previous majority, a majority that waved those rules in my face left and right, saying we have to abide by them because them's the rules. It's downright unfortunate. The rules of procedure of council can be bent or tweaked on a whim for some, but not all. Every single person who stayed up into the early morning of April 5th has a valid right to be absolutely miffed that there was an unfair opportunity in addressing this council. Every citizen should have the opportunity to exercise their First Amendment right. I do not dispute that whatsoever. But this was not the most equitable way to handle this process by any stretch. And so I am making this motion tonight to reaffirm that this council unanimously endorses every single aspect of our rules of procedure and will endorse them completely. Furthermore, if you look at the tape, if you look at the stuff, if you do FOIA our documents, you'll clearly see I've been calling for another public hearing on this since it happened. And so tonight, I really hope that this council can send a message that we support our rules of procedure, we're going to honor them, and we're also going to afford every single person the opportunity to speak. Welcome to democracy. That's how it works.
Does that include backroom deals?
Sorry.
Second.
Okay. Councilman Missions.
I appreciate your comments, Vice Mayor Feraldi, and you said a lot that I would have said. So I'm going to kind of cut to the chase here. One is public discourse, an honest, open debate about policy is the bedrock of our democracy. Just as the foundation of our constitutional republic is based on the exchange of ideas with civil discourse. So last week in this chamber, and again tonight, we saw a situation where these rules, the rules of our procedure to ensure that we had this civil discourse, was dismissed.
What are you talking about? You can't.
Madam Mayor,
I'm.
For the first time tonight, you're acting as the presiding officer in keeping this chamber civil. Thank you. Cheers, jeers, applause, and so forth is not permitted in these chambers. Yet, last week, the only people that seemed to be, I guess, summoned by the presiding officer were people that she personally disagreed with. But tonight, the same thing. Lynchburg's Democrats came out in droves, and the rules of procedure were dismissed for them. Now, I fully support our First Amendment and I fully support free speech, but we absolutely must adhere to these rules of procedure across the board, unbiased. And that is why I'm supporting Vice Mayor Feraldi's motion to reaffirm these rules of procedure unanimously.
Point of order. I'm confused exactly what rules and procedure were violated, since I'm fully aware, based on correspondence, that from what our clerk said, all but 4 people that spoke tonight signed up properly by noon on Friday for public comment. So all but 4 followed our rules procedure to sign up and speak by noon. So,
And Madam Mayor, if I may interject and answer that question, in previous councils, multiple things have happened. First and foremost, folks who had signed up after that deadline were not allowed to speak on topics before council. Furthermore, there were motions made at previous councils that I've been a part of where we were allowed to debate a tax. There are discrepancies all over. And so in making this motion, I am making an effort for this council to demonstrate to the community, regardless of what political persuasion you are, these are the rules and procedures we have and we support. And so that's why I'm incredibly frustrated with that. This is the process that we've had set in place. We must abide by it, regardless of who it benefits. And so to answer your question, again, regardless of the number, there are instances in the past where folks were not allowed to speak before this council that I had to publicly ask for permission for the council to allow them to speak. That didn't happen here. We just amend them via email. I'm not throwing blame left or right. I'm not on did the presiding officer mess something up or no. I'm simply saying we need to reaffirm this. And that moving forward, this is our expectation. So we're all clear.
I thank you for the clarification. I'm just saying the comparison to last week's meeting and tonight is just confusing because, like I said, the people that signed up prior to noon or by noon on Friday were following the rules and procedure. The 4 additional names that were added after the fact, from what I understand, following the correspondence, were added with permission, following rules and procedure, with the permission of 4 council members, which constitutes a majority. So it doesn't sound like that was done in the shadows as it was referenced, which does sound very different to what was referenced last week. So I just wanted to clarify that. I have no problem reaffirming our rules and procedures, but I just want to clarify that it doesn't sound like it's a similar comparison at all. So I just wanted to put that out there. Anybody else want to comment? Dr. Wilder?
Yes, again, I also thought that the request was correct, that the request had to be in by 12 o'clock on Friday, which is our normal procedure. I understand that some of the emails went to your junk file, you pulled that out, and then one of the gentlemen sent the email to the wrong address. So I know you let that one go in. So I thought the majority of them had that, so I'm not clear on why we say we're not following policy and procedures. And then a note went out saying, this is the situation with these, is it okay, should I add them? I thought I got the email, so I responded back. So if you was responding back and saying no, I'm sure they would have acted upon that. So I'm a little, I don't understand why we say we're not following procedures.
Anyone else? Councilman Helgeson?
And the other one, I guess, from last meeting that was really troubling to me was when we had a citizen that was in the back of the room, simply disagreed by a nonverbal shaking of his head. And you threatened to have him thrown out of chambers. I've never seen that before in the history of council. I began serving with Carl Hutcherson about 20 years ago. It was just, the rules of procedure talk about things if somebody is using vulgarity and jumping up and down and yelling in profanity. The simple shaking of one's head in disagreement to what was stated in the back of the chambers and saying, I will have you thrown out of the chambers. That was totally uncalled for. I was very thankful that a couple other guys said he was shaking his head, and I watched the video over again. I was thankful that other council members said, no, that's not our rules of procedure. We treat our citizens civilly. We don't threaten them to throw them out of their chambers because of the fact that he didn't agree with you. And 2, quite frankly, that's not something that even should be even suggested, because that is simply, it was just very uncalled for. And that's another thing which I appreciate the Vice Mayor's recommendation that we reaffirm these. We usually do those, reaffirm our rules of procedure after the the new council is sworn in, and we didn't do that this time, and so I'm glad we're doing it now.
Appreciate your input on that. What I would like people to note on that specific reference is, if you'd like to go back and watch the video, that specific individual was actually shaking his head several times while I was speaking that night and actually mouthing words at me both times. And I consulted our city attorney about what I said to him, and I was actually within my rights because it was disruptive and it was harassing while I was speaking for him to be shaking his head and mouthing words at me. So if you'd like to watch the video, anyone, you can do that. So what would you like to say, Councilman Mischens?
I just wanted to point out, I think specifically what Vice Mayor Ferrari was talking about is Section 8.4. These rules may be amended in any regular meeting or at any properly called special meeting. That includes amendment of the rules as one of the stated purposes of the meeting. Adoption of an amendment to these rules shall require an affirmative vote of 4 members of the council. There's no way we can do that via email because it's not a meeting. So I just wanted to point that out since I found it for you.
Great. Before we vote, I'd also like to make note that I find it ironic how certain behaviors are called out and certain are not by previous meetings and how they haven't been brought up, but then certain are. All right, so let's vote about reaffirming our rules and procedure. We can.
I was to make sure I'm clear. I'm affirming our procedures, but I believe our procedures were followed.
Correct. They were.
Yeah,
We're just reaffirming the rules and procedures. that we're
Yeah.
already following.
we did that in January, but that's okay.
I don't think we actually did.
Well, we do have an amendment that.
We're supposed to, yeah.
Yeah, we just called the vote, sure. Yeah.
The motion passes 7-0.
All right, we are now going to, in consideration of a closed meeting, to discuss the sale of real property owned by the city, where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the city pursuant to Section 2.2-3711A3 of the Code of Virginia 1950 as amended, and consideration of a closed meeting to discuss appointments for vacancies to the following boards and commissions: Lynchburg Regional Airport Commission pursuant to Section 2.2-3711A1 of the Code of Virginia at 1950 as amended, yes? And consideration of a closed session to review and/or evaluate the performance of the city manager pursuant to Section 2.2-3711A1 of the Code of Virginia, 1950 as amended. May I have a motion to go in closed
Madam
meeting?
Mayor,
Yes,
Madam Mayor, I
yes.
move to go into closed session regarding items 8 and 9.
Okay.
Which ones are those?
I don't have my things, which ones are those? I don't have my.
The sale of property and board appointments.
Second.
Okay. We have.
Madam Mayor?
No further comment.
I do have further comment. I do believe that if we aren't going to go into closed session to discuss the performance of the city manager, then I'll just be happy to do it right here out in the open. And the concerns that I have is that this council directed the city manager to produce bold tax relief in the budget, and instead we had a bold tax increase. And that is what I would like to discuss. But if you guys would not like to go into closed session to discuss that, then so be it. We'll vote.
Who seconded it? So you seconded to only take 8 and 9 into
Yes, I
close.
seconded that,
So if we
yes.
do that, then Councilman Mischens wants to discuss it here.
It's been a long meeting, I will leave if he
Pardon?
has to. He's gonna discuss, can he discuss after we go in closed session, because I need to get out of here, I'm kind of failing.
Just
Been
one thing.
long.
Okay, let's vote on taking 8 and 9 to close, please.
I've got a comment on it.
What?
So on that one, what we've done is, earlier today, we moved those 3 items that were on the agenda. We moved those to tonight's agenda.
Correct.
We've already taken action to move all those items on the agenda. Now, if somebody wants to amend the agenda, that, according to our rules of procedure, would need to apply. And I think what we could do is still do all three of those that are on the agenda. And obviously, the time is late. We can have limited discussion, and at least it begins, because a council member put that on, I think, well before time. I think that was like 2 weeks before. So I would hope we could have all three on there and discuss them briefly, since I think we're all kind of getting ready to go to bed. So I'd I'd amend the motion that we can just put the three in that we earlier said that we were going to move to this evening. And I hope we can be brief with those.
So your motion is to include all three?
To include all three of them and be brief. I mean, we're going to be brief
Nothing's
and,
brief.
yeah, we'll be brief.
Okay, amended motion to put all three in. Do you have a
Be
second
quick,
on
I
that?
think we're all tired and all ready to not have another 2:30 meeting.
Okay, so we'll vote on the amended motion. Yeah, it was Marty. Oh, Councilman Mission, sorry.
Council's in agreement
Councilman Mission.
versus talking about it in public, there's no issue in accepting it by consensus and voting on the amended motion.
Yes. So we're voting on the amended motion right now, voting by consensus.
This, the amended is to do all
All
three?
three.
Okay.
Yes.
Great, thanks.
Madam Mayor, I was not inclined to move forward with all three in any capacity.
Okay, so does the amended
And
motion?
if there's
Then
not,
vote no.
if there's
There's not
not consensus, then there needs to be a vote on whether to amend the motion
Okay.
to include all three.
Okay, so we're going to vote to amend the motion to include all three.
No.
The motion passes 4-3.
Okay,
So now the amended motion is the main motion.
okay, so now we need a motion to take all three
So
in.
now the main motion is to go into closed session with all three.
Yep.
The motion passes 4-3.
You want to go to closed session?
Nope, I'm not going.
Okay, we're now in closed session.